Harry Potter was never the chosen one, he was something far more dangerous and ancient. Chapter 1, The Dreaming God. Harry's eyes snapped open. His heart hammered against his ribs as sweat plastered his hair to his forehead. The same dream again. For the 5th night running. He fumbled for his glasses on the nightstand, knocking over an empty water glass that shattered against the floor. Uncle Vernon's muffled curse echoed from down the hall. "Just great," Harry muttered, reaching for the broken pieces. As his fingers hovered over the shards, something strange happened. The glass fragments trembled, then lifted into the air, spinning slowly before knitting themselves back together. The repaired glass settled gently back onto the nightstand. Harry stared at his hand, then at the glass. He hadn't used his wand. Hadn't even thought a spell. He'd just wanted it fixed. "What the hell?" he whispered, flexing his fingers. This wasn't the first weird thing that had happened this summer. Books rearranging themselves on his shelf. Objects moving when he looked at them too long. But this was different. Deliberate. The dream pressed against his consciousness, fragments of it still vivid despite his waking. Stars wheeling overhead. A voice that wasn't a voice, speaking words that weren't words. And knowledge, terrible, wonderful knowledge, pouring into him like water into a vessel. A sharp rap at his bedroom window jolted Harry from his thoughts. An unfamiliar owl waited impatiently, a letter clutched in its beak. Harry let it in, taking the letter with a frown. The parchment felt unusually heavy, almost warm to the touch. Instead of the familiar Hogwarts seal, it bore a symbol he'd never seen before, 7 stars arranged in a pattern that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at it. The letter contained just 3 lines: "You're awakening faster than expected. Be careful who you trust. We'll find you at Hogwarts." No signature. Nothing to indicate who'd sent it. "Brilliant," Harry said, falling back onto his bed. "Just what I need. More cryptic warnings." He stared at his ceiling until dawn, the repaired glass and mysterious letter competing for space in his already crowded mind. Platform 9 3/4 buzzed with the usual start-of-term chaos. Harry navigated through the crowd, spotting Ron and Hermione already waiting by the train. The moment he approached, something subtle shifted in the atmosphere. The steam from the Hogwarts Express curled toward him, twisting into shapes that almost resembled letters before dissipating. "Harry!" Hermione threw her arms around him. "We've been so worried. You barely answered our letters all summer." "Sorry," Harry said, returning her hug. When they separated, he noticed her studying his face. "You look different," she said, head tilted. "Bad different or good different?" Harry asked, attempting a joke. "Just different." Her eyes narrowed. "Have you been sleeping?" "Not really," Harry admitted. "Weird dreams." "Nightmares?" "About you-know-who?" Ron asked, clapping him on the shoulder. Harry shook his head. "Not exactly. It's hard to explain." As they boarded the train, Harry felt a prickle between his shoulder blades. Someone was watching him. He turned to see a girl he didn't recognize, tall, with dark hair and unnervingly intense eyes. She didn't look away when their gazes met, just nodded slightly as if confirming something to herself. "Who's that?" Harry asked as they settled into their compartment. Ron craned his neck to look. "Dunno. Transfer student maybe. Hogwarts doesn't get many of those." "Never mind that," Hermione said, leaning forward. "Harry, what's been happening? Your letters were so vague." Harry hesitated. How could he explain things he didn't understand himself? The dreams. The wandless magic. The sense that something was waking up inside him. "It's been a weird summer," he finally said. "I've been doing magic without meaning to." "Accidental magic?" Hermione asked. "That's normal when you're younger, but not accidental," Harry cut in. "More like intentional, but I'm not casting spells." This morning I repaired a broken glass without my wand. Without even thinking a spell. The compartment fell silent. Ron and Hermione exchanged glances. That's not possible, Hermione said slowly. Wandless magic requires intense concentration and years of practice. Even Dumbledore, the train lurched, cutting her off. Outside their window, the countryside blurred, but not from the train's movement. The landscape itself seemed to warp, colors bleeding into each other. Harry blinked, and everything snapped back to normal. Did you see that? He asked. Ron and Hermione looked confused. See what? Harry shook his head. Nothing. Never mind. The conversation shifted to safer topics, summer activities, upcoming classes, speculation about their new defense against the dark arts teacher. But Harry caught Hermione watching him with concern when she thought he wasn't looking. As the journey continued, the strange girl passed their compartment several times, always seeming to find a reason to glance inside. On her third pass, Harry felt something brush against his mind, a light touch, like fingers skimming the surface of water. Without thinking, he pushed back. The girl stumbled, catching herself against the corridor wall. Their eyes locked, and for an instant, Harry saw something ancient behind her gaze. Who is she? Harry muttered. Her name's Alara Blackwood, came a dreamy voice from the doorway. Luna Lovegood stood there, radish earrings swinging. She's in my year, but transferred from Beauxbatons. The Raxperts avoid her completely. Luna drifted away before they could ask more questions, leaving Harry with an uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. The great hall's enchanted ceiling reflected Harry's mood, stars partially obscured by restless clouds. As Dumbledore rose to make his start-of-term announcements, Harry's attention was drawn to an unfamiliar face at the staff table. And finally, Dumbledore was saying, I'm pleased to introduce Professor Quirrus, who will be taking over history of magic while Professor Binns pursues some historical research. The new professor stood briefly. He was younger than most Hogwarts teachers, perhaps in his 30s, with prematurely silver hair and sharp features. His eyes swept the hall, pausing momentarily on Harry before moving on. History of magic might actually be interesting this year, Ron said through a mouthful of treacle tart. Professor Binns wasn't that bad, Hermione protested weakly. Ron snorted. Hermione, even you fell asleep in his class. As they bantered, Harry felt the headmaster's gaze on him. When he looked up, Dumbledore was indeed watching him with an unreadable expression. After a moment, the headmaster gave a slight nod and turned away. That night in the Gryffindor dormitory, Harry dreamed again. He stood in a vast, dark space, stars wheeling overhead in patterns no astronomer would recognize. 7 particularly bright stars pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat. You're remembering, said a voice that wasn't a voice. Remembering what? Harry asked. What you are. What we are. We. The 7. The Shapers. The Moirai. Harry woke with a gasp, the word Moirai echoing in his mind. Dawn light filtered through the dormitory windows. His bed sheets were soaked with sweat, and when he looked down at his hands, they were glowing faintly, traced with patterns like constellations. He blinked, and the glow vanished. But the patterns remained etched in his memory. Professor Quirrus's classroom bore little resemblance to the dusty, soporific environment they were used to. Maps covered the walls, but unlike normal maps, these seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Glass cases displayed artifacts Harry couldn't identify, objects that seemed to blur at the edges, as if reluctant to be confined to a single shape. History, Quirrus said without preamble as the class settled, is not what you think it is. His accent was difficult to place, sometimes it seemed American, sometimes vaguely European, occasionally something else entirely. You've been taught that magic has a linear progression. Primitive spells evolving into more complex forms. Wand lore developing over centuries. Magical creatures adapting alongside human societies. He paused, eyes sweeping the classroom. What if I told you that's backwards? Hermione's hand shot up. Sir, all the historical evidence collected and interpreted by modern wizards, Kairos cut in. Consider this, what if magic was once more powerful, more intrinsic? What if our ancestors didn't need wands or spells, because they themselves were magic? The classroom remained silent, students exchanging confused glances. All except Harry, who felt a strange resonance with the professor's words. Before recorded history, Kairos continued, before the Ministry, before Hogwarts, there existed beings who shaped magic itself. They didn't cast spells, they wrote the very laws that make spells possible. Harry's heart pounded. This sounded eerily like his dreams. The ancient Greeks called them the Moirai, the Fates, Kairos said, and Harry nearly fell out of his chair. Different cultures had different names, but all described the same concept, beings who could manipulate reality at its foundation. Throughout the lesson, Harry felt Kairos watching him. When class ended, the professor called out, "Mr. Potter, a moment please." Harry approached the desk as other students filed out, Hermione throwing a curious glance over her shoulder. "You know, don't you?" Kairos asked quietly once they were alone. "Know what, Professor?" Harry replied cautiously. Kairos studied him, then rolled up his sleeve to reveal a forearm marked with the same star pattern Harry had seen on his own hands that morning. The dreams have started. The spontaneous magic. The sense that you're connected to something larger than yourself. It wasn't a question. Harry's mouth went dry. "How did you?" "Because I've been where you are," Kairos said. "Though my awakening was much less dramatic than yours promises to be." Awakening? Kairos glanced at the door, then waved his hand. Harry felt a subtle shift in the air, a privacy charm, but unlike any he'd seen cast before. No wand. No incantation. You're not just a wizard, Mr. Potter. You're a vessel. One of 7 possible vessels for entities much older and more powerful than anything in your experience. "The Moirai," Harry whispered. Kairos nodded. "Your scar, your connection to Voldemort, those are symptoms, not causes. You survived the killing curse because the thing inside you cannot be killed by conventional magic." Harry's mind raced. "So I'm not, me. I'm something else using my body." No, Kairos said quickly. "It's more complex than that. You are Harry Potter. But you're also a vessel for something ancient that's been dormant inside you since birth. Now it's waking up." "Why now?" "Proximity to powerful magical events. Age. Necessity." Kairos shrugged. "The Moirai awaken when they're needed." Harry thought of the letter, the strange girl on the train. There are others who know about this. Yes. Some who want to help you. Some who want to control you. Kairos handed him a small, ancient-looking book. "Read this. It explains what you are in more detail than I can provide here." Harry took the book, feeling its weight, physical and otherwise. "Be careful who you trust, Mr. Potter. Even those closest to you might fear what you're becoming." The book Kairos gave him was written in a language Harry had never seen, yet he could read it perfectly. It told of the Moirai, 7 primordial entities who existed before magic was codified. They could manipulate reality through pure will, shaping the very fabric of existence. Over millennia, they bound themselves to human bloodlines, becoming dormant as structured magic, wands, spells, potions, became the norm. But occasionally, a perfect vessel would be born, allowing a Moirai to awaken once more. Harry read late into the night, the common room empty around him. According to the book, an awakened Moirai could perform feats impossible for normal wizards, manipulating matter, perceiving beyond physical limitations, even altering the flow of time in limited ways. "That can't be right," he muttered, closing the book. The fire in the grate, which had been dying down, suddenly flared high, flames taking the shape of the 7-star pattern before collapsing back to normal. Harry stared, heart racing. Couldn't sleep either. Hermione's voice made him jump. She stood at the bottom of the girls' staircase in her dressing gown. Just doing some reading, Harry said, trying to casually cover Kairos's book. Hermione sat beside him. Harry, what's really going on? And don't say, nothing. I know you too well. Her concern was genuine, her friendship one of the few constants in his life. If he couldn't trust Hermione, who could he trust? I think I'm changing, he admitted. Becoming something else. He told her about the dreams, the wandless magic, his conversation with Kairos. He explained about the Moirai and showed her the book, which to his surprise, she couldn't read at all. To her, it appeared to be written in shifting symbols that gave her a headache. This is... She searched for words. Harry, this is beyond anything I've read about. You think I'm going mental, he said flatly. No, she replied quickly. I've seen too many impossible things since meeting you to dismiss this. But we need to research properly, verify what this Professor Kairos is telling you. Her analytical approach was comforting in its familiarity. They agreed to meet in the library the next day, and Harry felt lighter having shared his burden. As Hermione headed back to her dormitory, she paused. Harry. Whatever you are or aren't, you're still my friend. That won't change. The simple declaration meant more than she could know. The next few weeks followed a pattern. Classes during the day, where Harry struggled to focus as his senses became increasingly acute. He could hear conversations across crowded rooms, see magic itself flowing through the castle walls, feel the unique magical signatures of everyone around him. Evenings were spent in research with Hermione and eventually Ron, who took the news with surprising calm. Mate, you've never been normal, he said with a shrug. Why start now? They discovered little in the conventional library, but in a forgotten corner of the restricted section, Hermione found references to star-marked ones, who could weave spells without words or wands. Harry's abilities continued to develop. In charms, he accidentally levitated every object in the classroom simultaneously. During transfiguration, he transformed a teacup into a bird without using his wand, earning a sharp look from McGonagall. Throughout it all, he felt watched. Elara Blackwood appeared everywhere, observing him with those ancient eyes. Dumbledore studied him during meals with an increasingly troubled expression. And Kairos continued to drop cryptic hints during their now regular private conversations. The Conclave knows you're awakening, Kairos warned one evening. They'll make contact soon. Who are the Conclave? Harry asked. Wizards who believe the Moirai should be controlled, studied. Used. Kairos's expression darkened. They've been hunting vessels for centuries. And what do you believe? I believe you should be guided, not controlled. The power awakening inside you could reshape our world, for better or worse. The confrontation Harry had been sensing finally came on a crisp October evening. He was returning from Quidditch practice, having amazed even himself by catching the snitch blindfolded. He could feel its magical signature without seeing it. As he crossed the grounds, a subtle distortion in the air caught his attention. The world seemed to warp, colors bleeding together as they had on the train. Acting on instinct, Harry turned toward the forbidden forest. I know you're there, he called. You've been watching me for weeks. Elara Blackwood stepped from between the trees, no longer bothering to hide. You're developing faster than they predicted, she said, her voice carrying a strange harmonic quality. They're getting nervous. They? The Conclave? She smiled. So Kairos has been filling your head with warnings. Interesting. What do you want from me? Harry demanded. To help you, Harry Potter. To show you what you truly are. I know what I am. Do you? She lifted her hand, and the air around her shimmered. The forest floor cracked, roots erupting upward to form a throne-like chair where she sat with unnatural grace. Show me. The challenge hung in the air between them. Harry hesitated, then reached for the power he'd been trying to control for weeks. He focused on the fallen leaves at his feet, willing them to rise. They did more than rise, they swirled around him in a cyclone of autumn colors, then transformed, hardening into crystalline fragments that caught the dying light. With another thought, he sent them flying toward Elara. She deflected them with a casual wave, the crystals dissolving to dust. "Parlor tricks," she said. "You're still thinking like a wizard. Stop trying to cast spells and start reshaping reality." Anger flared in Harry. He reached deeper, to that well of ancient knowledge that surfaced in his dreams. The sky above them darkened, clouds gathering unnaturally fast. Lightning flashed, not from the clouds, but from Harry's hands, arcing toward Elara in a blinding display. She caught the lightning, compressed it into a sphere that she tossed from hand to hand like a snitch. "Better," she acknowledged. But still restrained. With a flick of her wrist, she sent the lightning ball skyward where it exploded, momentarily turning night to day. In the flash, Harry saw others emerging from the forest, 5 robed figures with faces hidden in shadow. "The conclave has existed for millennia, Harry Potter," Elara said, standing. "We've guided every Morai awakening since the fall of Atlantis. Let us help you master what you're becoming." "By controlling me," Harry said, the knowledge surfacing from somewhere deep inside. "By directing your power toward the greater good," one of the robed figures responded. His voice carried authority, the practiced tone of someone used to being obeyed. Harry felt the subtle pressure of multiple minds trying to influence his thoughts. Legilimency, but far more sophisticated than anything Snape had used against him. "Stop," he commanded, the word carrying more than sound. The mental pressure vanished instantly. "Impressive," the lead figure said, lowering his hood to reveal a distinguished older man with calculating eyes. "Most vessels require months to develop such mental shields." "I'm not most vessels," Harry replied, surprising himself with his confidence. "Indeed not," the man agreed. "You're potentially the most powerful Morai vessel in recorded history. Which is why you need proper guidance." "The kind of guidance that puts me under your control?" Harry challenged. "The kind that prevents you from destroying yourself and others," the man countered. "Raw Morai power is unstable, especially during awakening. Without proper containment methods, that's quite enough, Castellan." The new voice belonged to Dumbledore, who appeared at the forest's edge, accompanied by Professor Kairos. "Mr. Potter is a Hogwarts student under my protection." The atmosphere shifted instantly, tension crackling like electricity. Harry felt power gathering around the headmaster, different from his own, more structured but no less potent. "This doesn't concern you, Dumbledore," Castellan said coldly. "Morai matters fall outside even your jurisdiction. When you accost my students on school grounds, it very much becomes my concern." Dumbledore's voice remained pleasant, but his eyes had lost their twinkle. Kairos stepped forward. "The Vigil has equal claim to any awakening vessel, Castellan. You know the ancient compact." "The Vigil," Elara spat. "Outdated observers who would leave him fumbling in the dark rather than reaching his potential." Harry looked between them, realizing he was caught between opposing factions, neither of which had bothered to ask what he wanted. Power surged through him, wild and demanding expression. The ground beneath them trembled. Trees swayed though no wind blew. In the castle, windows rattled in their frames. "Enough!" Harry shouted, releasing a fraction of the energy building inside him. A shockwave rippled outward, knocking everyone back several steps. The forest fell silent, even the creatures that normally rustled and called went still. "I'm not your weapon," Harry said to Castellan. "Or your project," he added to Kairos. "And I'm not something to be controlled," this to Dumbledore, whose expression showed surprise at being included. Harry felt something fundamental shifting inside him, the power aligning with his will rather than the other way around. For a brief moment, he saw beyond physical limitations, perceiving the magical currents flowing through everything around him. He could reshape those currents with a thought. "Mr. Potter," Dumbledore began, his tone carefully modulated. I understand you're experiencing changes beyond your control, that's just it, Harry interrupted. I am in control. For the first time, I'm seeing things clearly. He turned to Castellan. The Conclave has been manipulating Moirai vessels for centuries, channeling their power for your own agenda. You don't want to help me, you want to use me. Castellan's expression hardened. You have no idea what forces you're playing with, boy. Actually, I do. Harry smiled grimly. Because they're part of me now. To demonstrate, he raised his hand toward the sky. The clouds parted at his command, revealing stars that rearranged themselves momentarily into the seven-pointed pattern from his dreams. The Conclave members stepped back, whispering among themselves. Elara alone seemed delighted, her eyes shining with something like pride. Harry, Kairos said urgently. This display is dangerous. You're attracting attention from entities beyond this realm. Your concern would be more convincing if you'd been honest from the beginning, Harry replied. The Vigil doesn't just observe Moirai vessels, you bind them. Limit them. Kairos paled. How did you? I'm starting to access the memories, Harry explained. Not just mine. The Moirai's. Dumbledore stepped forward, and for the first time, Harry saw genuine alarm in the headmaster's eyes. Harry, I must insist we continue this discussion in my office. Your safety is not your primary concern, Harry finished. You've known what I am since my parents died. You've been preparing contingencies in case I became too powerful. The accusation hung in the air. Dumbledore didn't deny it. It's complicated, Harry, the headmaster finally said. There are factors you don't understand, a high, cold laugh interrupted him. Everyone turned to see a familiar, terrible figure emerging from the forest depths. How fascinating, said Lord Voldemort, red eyes gleaming with interest. The boy who lived is something far more valuable than a prophesied adversary. Death Eaters materialized around him, wands raised. The Conclave members moved to defensive positions. Dumbledore and Kairos stepped in front of Harry. Tom, Dumbledore said evenly. This is unexpected. I've been watching for some time, Voldemort replied. Waiting to understand what power the boy has been manifesting. His lipless mouth curved into a smile. A Moirai vessel. No wonder my killing curse rebounded. Harry felt surprisingly calm. The fear that normally gripped him in Voldemort's presence was absent, replaced by a cool assessment of the magical energies surrounding them. You can't have him, Castellan declared, surprising everyone. Whatever our disagreements, the boy is under Conclave protection. How noble, Voldemort mocked. And completely irrelevant. He raised his wand, but before he could cast, Harry stepped forward. He moved through space differently now, covering the distance between protective barriers and open ground in what seemed like a single step. This is between us, Tom, Harry said, using Voldemort's abandoned name deliberately. Energy crackled around him, visible now as patterns of light tracing the same star configurations he'd seen in his dreams. His scar, which had remained curiously quiet despite Voldemort's presence, began to glow with the same light. Voldemort's eyes widened fractionally, the only indication of surprise from the Dark Lord. Fascinating, he repeated. You've accepted what you are. I'm learning, Harry corrected. And my first lesson is dealing with threats. He raised his hand, and reality seemed to bend around it. The very air between him and Voldemort compressed, twisted, then snapped back with explosive force. Voldemort erected a shield charm instantly, but the energy simply flowed around it, striking him directly. The Dark Lord was thrown backward, crashing through trees that splintered on impact. His Death Eaters moved to attack, but found themselves frozen in place. Harry had extended his influence over the space they occupied, temporarily removing their ability to move. Voldemort rose, fury and calculation warring on his serpentine face. Impressive, he acknowledged. But raw power isn't mastery, boy. He countered with a spell chain of such complexity that the air hissed and smoked where it passed. Harry didn't dodge or block conventionally. Instead, he altered his relationship to time, perceiving the attack in slow motion and simply stepping aside at the last moment. "Impossible," someone whispered behind him. The duel escalated, Voldemort drawing on dark magic so potent it scarred the forest floor, Harry responding with abilities he was discovering moment by moment. Neither gained clear advantage, but Harry felt his control slipping as he channeled more power. The Moirai energy wanted to be unleashed completely, to remake the world according to its nature. Harry fought this impulse, knowing instinctively that surrendering entirely to the ancient power would cost him his identity, his humanity. Voldemort sensed his struggle. "You resist your true nature," he called, deflecting another energy surge. "That hesitation will be your downfall." A slight distraction was all the Dark Lord needed. His next curse caught Harry off guard, sending him stumbling. Voldemort pressed his advantage, casting a binding spell that wrapped around Harry like burning chains. "Now," Voldemort said, advancing, "let's see if I can separate the vessel from the power it contains." Harry felt the Moirai energy surging in response to the threat, demanding release. The choice crystallized: remain Harry Potter and possibly die, or surrender to the ancient being and lose himself. A third option presented itself in a moment of clarity. Not resistance or surrender, integration. "I am Harry Potter," he whispered, then louder, "and I am Moirai." The declaration reverberated with power. The binding spell shattered. The ground beneath them heaved and cracked. And Harry rose into the air, surrounded by a corona of light that took the form of vast, starry wings. Voldemort took an involuntary step back, raising his wand. Harry made a simple gesture, and the Dark Lord's wand disintegrated in his hand. Another gesture froze Voldemort in place. "You wanted to know what I am," Harry said, his voice carrying harmonics that weren't entirely human. "I'm what came before wizards. Before wands and spells and magical theory. I'm magic in its purest form." To demonstrate, he reached out and gently touched Voldemort's chest. The Dark Lord screamed as something was pulled from him, a writhing, shadow-like substance that Harry contained in a sphere of light. "A Horcrux fragment," Harry said, examining the sphere. "One of several. This is how you've anchored yourself to life." Dumbledore moved forward, astonishment evident on his face. "Harry, how did you—" "I can see the connections now," Harry explained. "The magical threads binding his soul fragments to this world." He looked at Dumbledore. "Including the one in my scar." Before anyone could respond, Harry pressed his hand to his own forehead. Pain flared briefly, then subsided as he extracted a similar shadow fragment. He combined it with the first in the sphere of light, which contracted until the fragments were crushed out of existence. Voldemort made a choked sound, swaying on his feet as his connection to those soul pieces was severed. "This isn't over," the Dark Lord hissed, signaling retreat to his Death Eaters. They disappeared in swirls of black smoke, Voldemort himself vanishing last with a look of calculation rather than defeat. In the silence that followed, Harry gradually descended, the starry wings fading. The immense power receded, not disappearing but settling into a more manageable state. He felt changed, integrated rather than possessed or transformed. Everyone stared at him with expressions ranging from awe to fear. Elara broke the silence, applauding slowly. "Magnificent," she said. "Now you understand what we can become." "What I've become," Harry corrected. "And what I choose to do with it is my decision." Castellan stepped forward, his earlier arrogance replaced by cautious respect. "The Conclave offers alliance rather than guidance," he said carefully. "Your demonstration has clarified certain perspectives. As has it for the Vigil," Kairos added. "We stand ready to assist rather than constrain." Only Dumbledore remained silent, his ancient eyes troubled. When he finally spoke, his voice carried genuine regret. "I owe you an apology, Harry. I've known of your true nature since that night in Godric's Hollow, but chose to keep it from you. I feared what might happen if the Moirai awakened fully. You tried to suppress it, Harry said, not a question. Dumbledore nodded. The blood protection at your aunt's house served dual purposes, shielding you from external threats while dampening the Moirai energy. I believed I was protecting you, and others from you. You were wrong, Harry said simply. Yes, Dumbledore agreed. I underestimated both the power and the person wielding it. You've shown remarkable restraint tonight. Harry looked around at the gathered factions, Dumbledore and Hogwarts, the Conclave, the Vigil. Each with their own agenda. Each wanting to influence what he was becoming. I need time, he decided. Space to understand what I am without pressure or manipulation. And if we insist on providing guidance? Castellan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Harry smiled slightly. You saw what happened with Voldemort. Do you really want to push me? The threat, mild as it was, hung in the air. Castellan inclined his head in acknowledgement and stepped back. Hogwarts remains your home, Harry, Dumbledore said. Whatever constraints I mistakenly imposed are lifted. I ask only that you exercise caution as you explore your abilities. Harry considered this, then nodded. I'll stay, for now. But no more secrets, Professor. No more manipulations. You have my word, Dumbledore promised. The Conclave members departed first, melting back into the forest with Castellan murmuring about maintaining observation. Kairos excused himself to update certain records, leaving Harry with Dumbledore and Elara. You should return to the castle, Miss Blackwood, Dumbledore said pointedly. Elara smirked. Of course, Headmaster. To Harry, she added, we'll talk soon. There's so much more to discover about what we are. After she left, Dumbledore sighed heavily. She is correct about one thing, Harry. There is much more to discover, and not all of it benign. The power you're accessing comes with responsibilities and dangers beyond what you've experienced tonight. I know, Harry said. I can feel it. Then you understand why I urge caution. I do. Harry started walking toward the castle, Dumbledore falling into step beside him. But I also understand something else now. What's that? Harry looked up at the night sky, where stars still traced patterns only he could fully perceive. I was never the boy who lived, never the chosen one of prophecy. Those were stories created to explain something much older and more complex. He smiled faintly. I was something else all along. Something far more dangerous, and far more ancient. As they reached the castle doors, Harry paused. The question now is what I choose to become. Dumbledore nodded gravely. Indeed, Harry. And that is a question only you can answer. Chapter 2, The unwritten spell. News traveled fast at Hogwarts, but for once, the rumors fell short of reality. Students whispered about a confrontation in the Forbidden Forest, about Harry Potter facing you-know-who again, but the details remained murky. Only those who had witnessed Harry's display of power understood what had truly happened. Harry sat by the lake, skipping stones with a flick of his finger rather than his hand. The stones didn't just skip, they hovered momentarily at each impact point, creating perfect ripple circles before moving to the next. Show off, said Ron, dropping onto the grass beside him. Just practicing, Harry replied with a half-smile. Hermione joined them, arms laden with books. I've been researching all morning. There's almost nothing about the Moirai in the regular library, but Professor Kairos gave me access to some private texts. She paused, watching Harry's floating stones. That's getting easier for you, isn't it? Harry nodded. It's like discovering muscles I didn't know I had. The more I use them, the more natural it feels. Brilliant, Ron said. So what else can you do? Turn water into wine. Make it rain frogs? It doesn't work that way, Harry said, letting the stones sink. I can't just do anything. There are principles. Rules, but not like spell rules. More like, the grammar of reality. Hermione's eyes lit with academic fascination. You're saying there's structure to this power? A system that can be understood? Maybe, Harry hedged. It's hard to explain. I just know some things are possible and others aren't, or shouldn't be attempted. The conversation paused as a group of Slytherins passed, Draco Malfoy among them. Since the forest incident, Malfoy had avoided Harry completely, crossing corridors to maintain distance. Harry caught snippets of their conversation, "Father says," and "Ministry involvement." "That's the third time I've heard something about the Ministry today," Harry noted once they'd passed. Ron grimaced. "Dad sent me an owl this morning. There's a lot of chatter at the Ministry about you. Fudge is apparently in a right state." "They can't possibly know what happened," Hermione said. "They know something happened," Harry replied. "And after the tournament last year and all that business with discrediting me, they'll be looking for any excuse." He'd barely finished speaking when an official-looking owl swooped down, dropping a purple-sealed letter in his lap. The Ministry's seal gleamed importantly in the sunlight. "Speak of the devil," Harry muttered, breaking the seal. The letter was brief and coldly formal. Harry was requested to appear before a special committee of the Department of Mysteries for evaluation of anomalous magical manifestation. The tone made it clear this wasn't actually a request. "They can't just summon you like that," Hermione said indignantly after reading over his shoulder. "You're a minor and a student. Dumbledore would never allow it." "Unless Dumbledore agrees with them," Harry said quietly. Despite the headmaster's apology in the forest, Harry wasn't convinced Dumbledore had abandoned his cautious approach. The man had spent years containing what he saw as a potential threat. One dramatic night wouldn't completely change that perspective. "So what are you going to do?" Ron asked. Harry pocketed the letter. "Ignore it, for now. I've got more important things to figure out." Those more important things took shape over the next few days as Harry, Ron, and Hermione established what they half-jokingly called Moirai training sessions. Finding a secure location proved their first challenge. The room of requirement seemed ideal until Harry realized Dumbledore was likely monitoring it. The solution came unexpectedly from Neville Longbottom, who'd noticed their secretive conversations. "If you're looking for somewhere private," he offered hesitantly one evening, "there's an old greenhouse behind Greenhouse 7. Professor Sprout said it was damaged years ago by some experimental plant and never fully repaired. No one uses it anymore." The abandoned greenhouse proved perfect, remote enough for privacy but not obviously suspicious. Hermione established a rotation of advanced privacy charms while Ron worked out a schedule that wouldn't attract attention. Harry, meanwhile, began the delicate process of understanding his abilities. "I need to show you something," he said during their first session, once the perimeter was secure. "But you can't freak out. After everything we've seen, mate." "Try us," Ron challenged. Harry nodded, then closed his eyes. He'd been practicing this privately, exploring the boundaries of perception. When he opened his eyes again, they glowed with subtle starlight, pupils expanded to show miniature constellations. "Bloody hell," Ron whispered. "Harry, your eyes." Hermione leaned closer, academic interest overcoming momentary shock. "I can see magic this way," Harry explained. "Not just spells, the underlying patterns." He looked around the greenhouse, perceiving layers invisible to normal sight. Magic flowed through everything, the remnants of old charms on the structure, the natural energy of plants long gone, the unique signatures of Ron and Hermione themselves. "You both look different like this," he said. "Ron, your magic is structured like architecture, solid shapes and supporting beams. Hermione, yours is like a library, organized shelves with information flowing between them." "That's..." Hermione seemed at a loss for words, perhaps for the first time in her life. "Can you see your own magic?" Ron asked practically. Harry shook his head. "It's like trying to see the back of your head without a mirror." This limitation became the focus of their first sessions, finding a way for Harry to understand his own magical structure. Hermione suggested creating a reflection pool, enchanting water to mirror magical signatures rather than physical appearances. The experiment partially succeeded. Harry could see some of his own magic reflected, a storm-like swirl with that same seven-pointed star pattern at its core. But the reflection kept distorting, as if something fundamental about his magic resisted being observed. "It's like trying to use normal physics to observe quantum particles," Hermione said, frustrated after their third attempt. "The act of observation changes what's being observed." Their breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. During defense against the dark arts, their new professor, a bland ministry appointee named Welk who'd replaced Umbridge after her sudden health leave, attempted to demonstrate shield charms. "Potter, attack me with a minor jinx," Welk instructed, raising his wand for the demonstration. Harry complied with a simple Jellylegs jinx, deliberately holding back. What happened next stunned the classroom. As his spell approached Welk's shield, Harry perceived it in that deeper way, seeing not just the magic but its structure, the way it was meant to interact with the shield. Without conscious thought, he reached out and rewrote that interaction mid-flight. The jinx passed through Welk's shield as if it weren't there. The professor collapsed, his legs wobbling uncontrollably. "What did you do?" Welk demanded once Hermione had performed the counter-jinx. "That was no ordinary spell." "I just cast what you asked for, Professor," Harry said innocently. The incident earned him detention, but more importantly, it revealed something crucial. Harry wasn't just casting magic, he was rewriting it on a fundamental level. He shared this discovery with Ron and Hermione that evening in the greenhouse. "I think I understand now," he said excitedly. "The Moirai doesn't just use magic, it writes the rules of how magic works. That's what I did today. I changed the spell's properties while it was in motion." "That's impossible," Hermione said automatically, then caught herself. "I mean, it should be impossible. Spells have fixed properties once cast." "For wizards," Harry corrected. "But not for a Moirai." This realization opened new avenues of experimentation. Rather than trying to catalog what he could do, Harry focused on understanding the principles that made it possible. He started with simple spells, casting them normally, then examining their structure and altering properties, changing a lumos from light to heat, transforming a levitation charm into a grounding force. "It's like learning a new language," he explained to his friends. "Except instead of words, I'm learning how to write reality." Professor Kairos found them during their fourth session. The door to the greenhouse swung open despite Hermione's locks, and the silver-haired professor stepped inside, hands raised non-threateningly. "Impressive privacy charms, Miss Granger," he said. "But perhaps next time add a hominum revelio variance to detect approach." Ron and Hermione moved protectively in front of Harry, wands raised. "It's okay," Harry said, stepping forward. He knew what I was before anyone else. "Indeed," Kairos agreed. "Though I'm pleased to see such loyalty. You'll need trusted friends for what's coming, Harry." "And what exactly is coming?" Hermione asked sharply. Kairos conjured a chair with a casual gesture, no wand, no incantation, and sat. "Conflict. Change. The awakening of a Moirai vessel always disrupts established power structures." He glanced around their makeshift training space. "But you're approaching this all wrong. How do you know what we're doing?" Ron challenged. "Because I've guided vessels before," Kairos replied. "Though none with Harry's potential." He turned to Harry. "You're trying to understand your abilities through the lens of wizardry, spells, effects, limitations. That's like trying to understand the ocean by collecting buckets of water." "Then how should I approach it?" Harry asked. "Start with your perception. You've discovered the sight, the ability to see magical structures. Now you need to learn memory." "I've been having dreams." Harry began. "Not your memories," Kairos corrected. "The Moirai's memories. The knowledge of what came before. He stood, moving to the center of the greenhouse. With a sweep of his arm, the cluttered space transformed. Plants vanished. Broken shelving repaired itself. The very dimension seemed to shift, creating a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. How did you do that? Hermione gasped. I didn't change the greenhouse, Kairos explained. I changed our relationship to it. This space exists in the overlap between dimensions, what the Moirai call the interstice. Harry felt a resonance with the word, interstice, as if a memory tried to surface. You're one of them, he realized aloud. A vessel. Kairos inclined his head. A limited one. My awakening was, managed by the Vigil. Enough to access some abilities, but never full integration. Is that why you're helping me? Because they held you back. I'm helping you because the Vigil's approach is outdated, Kairos said bluntly. For centuries, we've contained Moirai vessels, limited their awakening to prevent what we saw as dangerous disruption. But the world is changing. Voldemort's return, the fracturing of the magical community, we need the Moirai perspective now more than ever. So you're not really part of the Vigil anymore, Hermione concluded. Let's say my priorities have shifted. Kairos approached Harry. The Vigil believes vessels should be guided, contained, eventually returning to dormancy. The Conclave believes vessels should be exploited as weapons and tools. I believe there's a third path, full integration, but with human conscience intact. That's what I want, Harry said firmly. Then let me show you how to access the memories. In the center of the transformed space, Kairos created a circle of light. Within it, he traced that now familiar 7-pointed star pattern. Each point glowed a different color. The 7 aspects of primordial magic, he explained. Form. Void. Binding. Severance. Illumination. Shadow. And at the center, balance. As he named each aspect, Harry felt recognition stirring deep within. Not his knowledge, but something older. Stand in the center, Kairos instructed. Harry hesitated, looking at Ron and Hermione. We're right here, mate, Ron said. We won't let anything happen to you, Hermione added, though how she would stop anything involving such power remained unclear. Harry stepped into the circle. The moment his feet touched the center point, the star pattern flared. Light spiraled up around him, forming a cocoon of shimmering energy. Within that space, reality shifted. Harry found himself standing on an endless plain beneath an alien sky. 7 moons hung overhead, each a different color corresponding to the star pattern's points. On the horizon, impossible cities rose and fell like waves, architecture beyond human imagination. A figure approached, humanoid but not human, its form shifting between states of matter with each step. You remember this place, it said in that not voice Harry recognized from his dreams. The interstice, Harry replied, the knowledge surfacing naturally. The realm between realms. Yes. Before your kind structured magic, this was where we shaped reality. We. You're one of the original Moirai. I am you, and you are me. Vessel and entity, merged across time. The figure gestured, and the landscape transformed. Harry witnessed history unfolding, the birth of magic, the first human practitioners, the gradual codification of spells and wands. He saw the Moirai, once physical beings, becoming increasingly abstract as human magic developed structure. We chose to bind ourselves to bloodlines, the entity explained. To experience existence through human perspective. To guide rather than rule. But something went wrong, Harry said, the knowledge emerging as the memory unfolded. Yes. Fear. Control. The rise of those who would cage what they didn't understand. Images flashed faster, the formation of the Conclave, the counter-movement of the Vigil, centuries of vessels awakening only to be contained or exploited. Until you. The convergence point. What makes me different? Harry asked. Circumstance. Timing. The fragment of enemy soul that accidentally bridged connections. And choice, always choice. The entity approached, placing its shifting form hand on Harry's chest. Knowledge flowed between them, not just information but understanding, context, perspective that spanned millennia. Remember who you are, Harry Potter. Remember what we are together. Harry gasped as the connection broke, finding himself back in the greenhouse. He staggered, Ron catching him before he could fall. Harry! Hermione cried. Are you all right? You were only gone for seconds, but your eyes. I'm fine, Harry assured them, though fine inadequately described his state. He felt expanded, his consciousness stretching to accommodate new awareness. I remember now. Not everything, but enough. Kairos watched him with keen interest. What did you see? The beginning. The binding. The purpose. Harry met the professor's gaze. And I know what you're not telling us. Which is? There are others awakening. Not just me and Alara. All 7 vessels are becoming active simultaneously for the first time in history. Kairos's expression confirmed it. How much else did you learn? Enough to know I need to find the others before the conclave does. Harry turned to Ron and Hermione. And enough to know we need to expand our group. What's coming isn't just about me anymore. Recruiting trusted allies proved both necessary and dangerous. Each person brought into Harry's confidence represented both support and potential vulnerability. After careful consideration, they approached Luna Lovegood, Neville Longbottom, and Ginny Weasley, each having proven their loyalty during previous crises. Luna accepted Harry's nature with characteristic equanimity. That explains the pattern of Raxperts around you, she said serenely. They're not actually avoiding you, they're orbiting you like planets around a star. Neville was more hesitant, but his quiet determination proved valuable as they expanded their training. My gran always said magic was wilder in the old days, he told Harry. That modern wizards have forgotten more than they've learned. Ginny brought practical combativeness. So you can rewrite spells on the fly? Brilliant. Can you teach the rest of us anything useful, or is it all Morai-only techniques? This question sparked a new direction for their sessions. While Harry continued exploring his unique abilities with Kairos's guidance, the group also developed hybrid techniques, ways for conventional wizards to complement Morai powers. Hermione created a classification system for Harry's abilities, organizing them into the 7 aspects Kairos had identified. Harry proved strongest with form and binding, the ability to reshape physical matter and create connections between disparate elements. As January faded into February, their progress accelerated. Harry learned to access the interstice briefly without Kairos's assistance. He discovered he could perceive magical currents across vast distances, sensing significant gatherings of power throughout Britain. Most importantly, he began to identify other Morai vessels by their unique energy signatures. I can feel 3 others besides Alara, he told the group during an evening session. One in Eastern Europe. Another in North America. The third, somewhere tropical. What about the 7th? Hermione asked, consulting her notes. Kairos said there are always 7. I can't sense the last one, Harry admitted. It's like looking at a shadow, I know something's there, but I can't define it. Their research was interrupted by the greenhouse door bursting open. Fred and George Weasley tumbled in, breathless and alarmed. Harry, Fred gasped. You need to see this. George thrust a copy of the Evening Prophet into his hands. The headline blared, Ministry declares Potter, magical anomaly, special powers investigation launched. The article detailed a new Department of Mysteries initiative focused on containing potentially dangerous magical anomalies. Though Harry wasn't named directly beyond the headline, the implications were clear. It gets worse, Fred said grimly. Umbridge is back, heading some new magical integration office. Dad says it's really about registration and control. They're coming for you, mate, George added. And they're not planning to ask nicely this time. Harry scanned the article again, noting the quotes from concerned parents and ministry officials about unpredictable magical manifestations at Hogwarts. How did they find out? Ginny demanded. Someone's been talking, Ron said darkly. But who? Everyone here is trustworthy. Luna looked up from her copy of the paper. It doesn't say exactly what Harry is, just that he's manifesting unusual powers. That could have come from anyone who witnessed what happened in the forest. Or from the one person who knew before it happened, Harry said quietly. Dumbledore. The accusation hung in the air. Despite their uneasy truce, Harry had never fully trusted the headmaster's change of heart. The man had spent too many years believing containment was necessary. We don't know that for certain, Hermione cautioned. Maybe not, Harry conceded. But we need to prepare either way. If the ministry's coming for me, we need to be ready. Their contingency planning began immediately. Escape routes, communication methods, safe locations. The twins offered their shop in Diagon Alley as a potential refuge. Luna suggested her father could publish the truth in the Quibbler if needed. Hermione worried about legal implications, while Ron focused on practical logistics. Through it all, Harry felt strangely calm. The Moirai memories provided perspective. He'd faced versions of this scenario across centuries, persecution by those who feared what they didn't understand. There's a ritual site that might help, he said when the initial planning wound down. I saw it in the memories, a place where the veil between dimensions is thin. If I could access it, I might be able to complete the integration process. Where is this site? Neville asked. That's the problem. The memory shows a stone circle, but its location isn't clear. Somewhere in Britain, but the landscape has changed since the memory was formed. Hermione brightened. I might know someone who can help. Professor Babbling in Ancient Runes has been mapping magical sites across Britain for years. The following day, Hermione approached the professor under the guise of a special research project. She returned to their next meeting with a map and triumphant expression. There are 3 possibilities, she announced, spreading the map across their workspace. All ancient stone circles with unusual magical properties. One in Wales, one in Scotland, and one on an unnamed island in the Hebrides. Harry studied the locations, letting his enhanced perception flow over the map. When he reached the island site, recognition flared. That's it, he said confidently. The Circle of 7 Voices. How do we get there? Ginny asked practically. It's not like we can just take a weekend trip off school grounds with the ministry watching. Leave that to us, Fred said, exchanging meaningful looks with George. We've been developing some new products, George explained. Including our decoy detonators plus, create a diversion and a convincing duplicate in one go. And transportation taffy, Fred added. One chew and you look exactly like someone else for 30 minutes. Not as good as Polyjuice, but no brewing required. Harry nodded appreciatively. We'll need both. The plan is simple, create duplicates to maintain our cover here while we travel to the island. We'll need brooms for the sea crossing. When do we go? Ron asked. Harry glanced at the newspaper again. The article says the ministry committee arrives for inspection in 3 days. We go tomorrow night. The plan went smoothly, almost too smoothly. The twins' diversionary products worked perfectly, creating convincing duplicates of Harry, Ron, and Hermione who would attend classes while they were gone. Luna, Ginny, and Neville would cover for any discrepancies, claiming the trio was working on a special project approved by McGonagall. They slipped out under cover of darkness, using a secret passage the twins insisted even the Marauders' map didn't show. Transportation taffy transformed them into nondescript wizards as they made their way to Hogsmeade, where Fred and George waited with brooms and supplies. You've got 48 hours before the duplicates start deteriorating, Fred warned as they prepared to depart. And another problem, George added grimly. We heard from Lee Jordan, the ministry's moved up their inspection. They'll be at Hogwarts tomorrow morning, not the day after. Harry frowned. They must suspect something. We need to move faster. The flight north was cold and grueling. Even with warming charms, the February air bit through their clothes. They flew high to avoid detection, making navigation difficult through cloud cover. Harry's enhanced perception helped. He could sense magical currents flowing through the land below, using them as a map. Dawn found them huddled on a remote Scottish shore, preparing for the final leg across open water to the island. It's about 15 miles, Hermione said, consulting a compass charm. We should be able to see it once we clear that headland. As they mounted their brooms again, Harry felt a familiar sensation, the brush of another mind against his. He threw up mental barriers instantly, scanning their surroundings. We're being followed, he said quietly. Death Eaters? Ron asked, wand already drawn. Harry shook his head. Someone else. Someone with abilities similar to mine. They took off cautiously, Harry extending his awareness behind them. The presence followed but didn't attack, observing, not threatening. As they approached the island, it finally revealed itself. Elara Blackwood hovered on a broom behind them, her eyes glowing with the same starlight effect Harry could manifest. I wondered when you'd notice me, she called, accelerating to join them. You're getting better at perception. What do you want, Elara? Harry demanded. The same as you, answers. She gestured toward the island now visible through breaking fog. The circle of 7 voices is significant to all vessels. Did you think you'd be the only one drawn to it? Harry signaled his friends to keep their distance. Are you here for the conclave? Elara laughed, the sound carrying unnaturally over the wind. I haven't been reporting to Castellan, if that's what you're asking. My relationship with the conclave is complicated. You're another vessel, Hermione realized aloud. One of the 7 Harry's been sensing. Very good, Granger. Elara inclined her head. Aspect of shadow, at your service. She turned back to Harry. And you're primarily form and binding, with touches of illumination. An unusual combination. The knowledge resonated as truth. Harry could perceive her magical signature now that she wasn't concealing it, a deep, shifting pattern of darkness that wasn't evil but simply the absence of light, the necessary counterpoint to illumination. I'm not here to fight, Elara continued when Harry remained tense. Quite the opposite. The ritual you're planning requires multiple vessels. It won't work with just you. This matched what Harry had glimpsed in the Moirai memories, though he'd hoped to find a workaround. Why should we trust you? Ron challenged. Last time we saw you, you were with people trying to control Harry. Because I've broken with the conclave, Elara said simply. Their methods are outdated, their vision limited. They see vessels as tools to be wielded. I believe we're meant for more. Harry studied her, pushing his perception beyond physical appearance to the magical currents flowing through her. He could detect no deception, though shadow aspects were naturally difficult to read. What exactly is this ritual supposed to accomplish? Hermione asked. Full integration, Elara explained. Right now, Harry's accessing maybe 30% of his potential. The ritual can push that to 70, maybe 80%. And what do you get out of helping? Harry asked. Elara smiled thinly. The ritual works both ways, Potter. I help you integrate, you help me. The island loomed closer, its single hill crowned with standing stones visible through dissipating mist. Harry made his decision. You can come with us, he said. But my friends stay close, and at the first sign of betrayal, yes, you'll rewrite my existence or whatever dramatic threat you prefer, Elara cut in, rolling her eyes. Shall we proceed? The alignment we need only lasts a few hours. The circle of 7 voices proved both less and more than Harry expected. The stone circle itself was weathered, unremarkable to conventional sight. But viewed through Moirai perception, it blazed with power, ley lines converging beneath it in complex patterns, the stones themselves vibrating with contained energy. "It's magnificent," Hermione breathed, though she couldn't see what Harry and Elara perceived. "The rune work on these stones predates any known system." "Professor Babbling Wood, academic analysis later," Elara interrupted. "We have work to do." She moved to the center of the circle, kneeling to brush away centuries of accumulated soil. Beneath lay a flat stone bearing the 7-pointed star pattern. "This needs both of us," she told Harry. "You anchor form and binding, I anchor shadow. Together we can establish enough aspects to activate the circle." "What exactly will happen?" Harry asked, kneeling opposite her. "The veil between dimensions thins here. We can access the interstice more fully, allowing deeper integration with our Moirai aspects." She looked up at Harry's friends hovering anxiously nearby. "Your companions should step outside the circle. This will get intense." Ron started to protest, but Harry nodded reassurance. "It's okay. I can handle this." Once his friends retreated to the perimeter, Harry placed his hands on the star pattern opposite Elara. The moment they both connected, energy surged through the circle. The stones hummed, vibrating at frequencies beyond normal hearing. The star beneath their hands glowed, each point lighting in sequence. "Now," Elara instructed. "Reach for the interstice, but don't cross fully. We need to maintain physical presence here while extending awareness there." Harry closed his eyes, using the techniques Kairos had taught him. The barrier between dimensions seemed tissue-thin here, allowing him to perceive both realities simultaneously. In the interstice, the 7-pointed star expanded into a vast, 3-dimensional structure, a framework for reality itself. "Begin the binding," Elara's voice echoed in his mind, no longer completely human. Harry reached for the form and binding aspects, which responded to his call. Threads of golden energy flowed from his essence, weaving into the framework. Elara contributed shadow energy, dark but not malevolent, creating necessary contrast to his light. As they worked, Harry sensed other presences, distant awareness of the remaining vessels, each resonating with different aspects. Through the ritual, he could perceive them more clearly: the vessel of void in Eastern Europe, cold and analytical; illumination in North America, burning with purpose; severance in the tropics, wild and unpredictable. And still that 7th presence remained elusive, present but undefined, watching from some unreachable place. The ritual intensified. Energy spiraled up from the star pattern, encasing Harry and Elara in a cocoon of pure magical potential. Within that space, the barriers between vessel and entity dissolved. Harry experienced consciousness beyond human limitations, perceiving past and future simultaneously, understanding magic as a fundamental force rather than a tool to be used. Knowledge flooded him: the original purpose of the Moirai, their decision to bind with human bloodlines, the long cycle of awakenings and dormancy across millennia. He saw the pattern of history from a perspective beyond time, recognizing how Moirai influence had shaped magical development despite efforts to contain their power. Most significantly, he understood what made this awakening different. For the first time, all 7 vessels were activating simultaneously, creating resonance that amplified their individual powers. And something else, a threat emerging from beyond normal reality, a force that sought to unmake the very foundations of magic. "You see it now," Elara's consciousness intertwined with his. "The Unmaker. The reason we're all awakening. What is it?" Harry asked in this shared awareness. "Balance. Entropy. The necessary counterforce to creation. For millennia it's remained in equilibrium, but something has disturbed the balance." Images flashed between them, experiments in the Department of Mysteries, Voldemort's unnatural extensions of life, cracks in the fabric between dimensions. "We need all 7 to face what's coming," Elara continued. "That's why I left the Conclave. They don't understand the true threat. The ritual reached its climax. The energy cocoon contracted, forcing the expanded knowledge back into their physical forms. Harry felt his consciousness compress, not losing what he'd gained but reorganizing to accommodate it within human limitations. When the light finally faded, he found himself still kneeling opposite Alara, both of them changed. The star pattern beneath their hands had burned permanently into their palms, a mark of the integration they'd achieved. That was. Harry struggled to find words adequate to the experience. Yeah, Alara agreed, looking equally transformed. More than I expected. They stood shakily as Ron, Hermione, and the others rushed forward. Harry felt fundamentally different, more settled in his power, the Moirai aspect no longer a separate entity but integrated into his sense of self. Harry? Hermione asked cautiously. Are you okay? Your eyes. He conjured a small mirror with a thought, examining his reflection. His eyes had changed permanently, green irises now ringed with that subtle starlight effect, pupils occasionally shifting to reveal glimpses of constellations. I'm fine, he assured them. Better than fine. I understand now. Before he could explain further, a crack of apparition split the air. At the edge of the island, figures appeared, ministry officials in formal robes, led by a squat woman in pink whom Harry recognized immediately. Umbridge, Ron growled. And Fudge himself, Hermione added, pointing to the Minister of Magic who stood slightly behind his senior undersecretary. More figures appeared, Aurors in battle formation, unspeakables in their distinctive hooded robes, and most surprisingly, Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall. How did they find us? Ginny demanded. The ritual, Alara explained grimly. It released enough magical energy to be detected from the mainland. We should have established better containment. Harry stepped forward as the Ministry contingent approached the circle. He could sense their intentions clearly now, fear, determination, the absolute conviction that he represented a threat to be controlled. Mr. Potter, Umbridge called in her girlish voice, by order of the Ministry of Magic, you are to surrender yourself for evaluation and containment under the Magical Anomalies Protection Act. Protection? Harry repeated incredulously. Is that what you're calling it? Fudge stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable but resolute. This isn't negotiable, Potter. Our experts have determined your condition presents a significant threat to magical stability. Harry's enhanced perception showed him the truth behind the words, Umbridge's gleeful malice, Fudge's political calculations, the genuine concern of some Aurors who'd been told he was dangerous. He also saw Dumbledore's conflict, the headmaster trapped between his responsibility to protect a student and his long-held belief that Moirai power needed containment. I won't be contained, Harry said calmly. I'm not a threat unless you make me one. See his arrogance? Umbridge hissed to Fudge. Just as I warned you. The power has already corrupted him. Dumbledore stepped forward. Harry, please consider cooperation. The Ministry's concerns, while perhaps overstated, aren't entirely without merit. Your transformation is unprecedented in modern times. You told them, Harry realized, the betrayal stinging despite his suspicions. You went to the Ministry after promising to support me. I informed them of the basic situation, Dumbledore admitted. To prepare them for the changes magic itself is undergoing. I didn't anticipate this, heavy-handed approach. Umbridge signaled the Aurors, who spread out to surround the stone circle. Enough discussion. Potter, you will come with us now, along with anyone else exhibiting anomalous magical signatures. Her gaze shifted to Alara. Our sensors detected two distinct energy patterns. Harry felt Alara tensing beside him, shadow aspect gathering around her like a cloak. His friends moved closer, wands ready despite being outnumbered. Last chance, Mr. Potter, Fudge called. Come peacefully or we'll be forced to take measures. Harry could see the measures they prepared, specialized binding charms, magical dampening devices, even a portable containment field developed by the Department of Mysteries. None of which would work against a Moirai vessel at 70% integration. I can't allow this, Harry said simply. With a thought, he extended his awareness into the magical currents surrounding them. The Ministry's prepared spells and devices were complex but followed conventional magical principles he could now rewrite. On my command, Umbridge was saying to the Aurors, raising her wand. Harry moved first. Not physically, but through the fabric of magic itself. He touched the prepared binding spells, inverting their structure. He reached into the containment devices, disconnecting their power sources. Most importantly, he created a barrier around his friends, not a shield charm, but a more fundamental protection woven into reality itself. Now! Umbridge shrieked. The Aurors cast simultaneously, and nothing happened. Their spells fizzled mid-air, connections severed by Harry's adjustments. The containment devices sparked uselessly. Even their anti-disapparition jinxes failed, the magic unraveling at Harry's touch. Impossible, breathed and unspeakable. That's not the half of it, Harry replied. He raised his hand, and the very air around the Ministry contingent solidified. Not enough to harm them, just enough to restrict movement, like trying to walk through waist-deep water. Listen carefully, Harry said, his voice carrying unnaturally across the distance. I am not your enemy. I don't want conflict with the Ministry. But I won't be caged or studied or protected against my will. You're proving our point, Potter, Fudge blustered, struggling against the thickened air. This power is too dangerous for any individual to wield. Maybe, Harry acknowledged. But your alternative is worse. You don't understand what you're dealing with, what's coming. And what exactly is coming? Dumbledore asked, the only one who hadn't attempted to cast against Harry. Something that makes Voldemort look like a minor concern, Elara cut in. A threat to magic itself. Harry nodded. The ritual showed us. There's a force emerging, the Moirai call it the Unmaker. It's why we're all awakening simultaneously. This caught the Unspeakable's attention. One pushed back their hood, revealing a severe-looking witch with calculating eyes. You're referring to the dimensional anomalies we've been detecting, she asked. If by anomalies you mean tears in the fabric of reality, then yes, Harry replied. Preposterous, Umbridge spat. He's inventing threats to justify his power grab. Harry sighed, then extended his perception outward, searching for the nearest tear. Finding one, he carefully thinned the barrier between dimensions just enough to create a visible effect. Above the island, the sky rippled. Colors inverted briefly. For a moment, everyone present could see through to the interstice, the swirling, star-filled void beyond normal reality. Several Aurors gasped. The Unspeakables whispered urgently among themselves. Even Umbridge fell silent. That's just a glimpse, Harry explained as he sealed the barrier again. The tears are spreading. If they continue, magic as we know it will unravel. Why should we believe you? Fudge demanded, though with less conviction. Because he's telling the truth, came Dumbledore's quiet voice. The signs have been there for those paying attention. Magical instability. Spells functioning unpredictably. Creatures from wizarding legends suddenly reappearing. The Unspeakable Witch stepped forward. Our department has recorded 17-dimensional anomalies in the past month alone. If Potter has information about their cause. I do, Harry confirmed. But not as your prisoner or test subject. An uncomfortable silence fell as the Ministry officials conferred. Harry maintained his passive control over the magical environment, ready to act if they attempted capture again. Finally, Fudge addressed him with obvious reluctance. What are your terms, Potter? Freedom to act. For me and anyone working with me. No monitoring, no restrictions, no interference. Harry's gaze hardened. And Umbridge nowhere near this situation. The toad-like woman sputtered indignantly, but Fudge was already nodding. And in exchange, the minister pressed. I'll share what we learn about the threat. Work with your unspeakables as a partner, not a subject. And when the time comes, stand between your world and what wants to unmake it. The negotiation might have continued, but at that moment, a massive surge of energy rippled across the island. Everyone staggered, wizard and Moirai vessel alike. The sky darkened unnaturally, and a tearing sound filled the air, like fabric ripping on a cosmic scale. Above them, reality split. Through the tear, something moved, a presence without form, a negation rather than an entity. Where it touched, matter simply ceased to exist, converted back to magical potential. "It's here," Elara whispered, fear evident despite her power. An aspect of the Unmaker, manifesting physically. Harry reached instinctively for his integrated power, extending perception toward the tear. What he sensed defied description, not evil, but alien beyond comprehension. A force that existed to return complexity to simplicity, form to void, creation to raw potential. "Everyone back," he shouted, throwing up a barrier between the tear and the island. The barrier held for moments only before beginning to dissolve. The Unmaker aspect didn't attack it, it simply converted the magical structure back to undifferentiated energy. "We can't fight it conventionally," Elara called to Harry. "We need to rewrite the space it's entering." Harry understood immediately. Together, they reached for their respective aspects, form and shadow, weaving them into a complex pattern that defined the area around the tear as incompatible with the Unmaker's nature. The Ministry contingent watched in astonishment as Harry and Elara worked magic beyond wizarding comprehension. They weren't casting spells but altering the fundamental properties of reality in the affected area. Gradually, the tear began to close. The Unmaker aspect, finding the modified space hostile to its existence, retreated back beyond the dimensional barrier. With a final surge of effort, Harry and Elara sealed the tear completely. The silence afterward was profound. Harry and Elara stood exhausted but triumphant, the demonstration of the threat, and their ability to counter it, more effective than any argument. "That," Harry said into the silence, "is what we're facing. Still want to contain us?" Fudge looked shaken to his core. The Unspeakables were already documenting what they'd witnessed, their skepticism replaced by intense interest. Dumbledore studied Harry with new understanding, and perhaps a touch of remorse. "I believe," the headmaster said carefully, "that a reconsideration of our approach is warranted." Umbridge began to protest, but Fudge silenced her with an uncharacteristically firm gesture. "We will need to establish protocols," the minister said. "The Ministry cannot simply grant unlimited autonomy, even in these circumstances." "Understood," Harry replied. "But those protocols will be negotiated as equals, not imposed as restrictions." The conversation might have continued, but Harry sensed another presence approaching, one he recognized instantly. "We have company," he warned, turning toward the shore. A boat approached through the mist, bearing a single figure. As it reached land, Kairos stepped onto the beach, his expression grim. "You felt it too," he said without preamble. Harry nodded. "A direct manifestation. First time in our dimension." "It won't be the last," Kairos replied, surveying the gathered officials with something like disgust. "I see the Ministry has made its typical measured, thoughtful response to the unknown." Fudge bristled. "Now see here." "No, you see," Kairos interrupted. "While you've been attempting to cage the very people who might save you, the barriers between dimensions are failing. That manifestation was just a fraction of what's coming." He turned to Harry and Elara. "The ritual was successful?" They displayed their marked palms in answer. "Good. We'll need that integration for what's ahead." Kairos addressed the wider group. "The Unmaker manifests more frequently where magical energy concentrates. Your Ministry, Hogwarts, places like this island, all at risk. If you interfere with the vessel's ability to prepare and respond, you doom yourselves." The Unspeakable Witch stepped forward. "You're suggesting we simply allow unregulated exercise of power that violates fundamental magical principles?" I'm suggesting you recognize when your regulatory framework is inadequate to the situation, Kairos replied coolly. These aren't rogue wizards, they're Moirai vessels. The principles they're violating are ones they helped write before your ministry existed. The standoff continued, neither side willing to fully concede. Harry, feeling the exhaustion of the ritual and confrontation, made a decision. This isn't getting us anywhere, he said. And we don't have time to waste. He turned to his friends, who had watched the proceedings with varying degrees of awe and concern. We need to go, he told them quietly. Now, while they're still arguing jurisdiction. Go where? Hermione asked. Somewhere they can't find us easily. Somewhere we can prepare properly. He glanced at Elara and Kairos, who nodded understanding. You have a place in mind? Ron asked. Harry nodded. The Moirai memories showed me several locations, places between realities where we can train without interference. Before anyone could react, Harry extended his power. Not aggressively, but thoroughly, temporarily disconnecting the ministry officials' ability to track magical signatures or prevent disapparition. This isn't over, he called to Dumbledore and Fudge. But it continues on our terms, not yours. With that, he gathered his friends, Elara, and Kairos into a circle. Drawing on his newly integrated abilities, Harry didn't apparate in the conventional sense. Instead, he folded space around them, creating a pathway through the interstice itself. The last thing the ministry officials saw was the group shimmering like stars before vanishing completely, not with the crack of apparition, but with a sound like distant wind chimes. They had gone beyond conventional tracking, beyond ministry jurisdiction, beyond even Dumbledore's considerable reach. The time for playing by wizarding rules had passed. Now they would prepare for war on a scale no modern wizard had witnessed, a war for the very fabric of magic itself. Chapter 3, The Seventh Star. The abandoned temple stood on an unplottable island somewhere in the Mediterranean, its white marble columns gleaming in the sunrise. Ancient magic hummed through its foundations, recognizing the Moirai essence within Harry and Elara. To conventional wizards, the island didn't exist, not hidden, but literally between realities, accessible only to those who could perceive beyond normal dimensional constraints. Harry sat cross-legged at the temple's edge, overlooking the impossibly blue sea. 6 weeks had passed since their dramatic escape from the ministry. 6 weeks of preparation, training, and gathering allies. 6 weeks watching the world unravel at its magical seams. Another tier opened near Oslo last night, Hermione said, dropping a stack of parchments beside him. Her hair was pulled back in a practical braid, dark circles under her eyes from too many late nights coordinating their growing network. That makes 23 this month. Harry nodded, not surprised. He'd felt the dimensional shift even from their sanctuary, a distant sensation like fabric stretching to breaking point. Kairos and Luna contained it? Barely. Hermione sat beside him, hugging her knees to her chest. Each manifestation is stronger than the last. The containment protocols we developed 2 weeks ago are already becoming ineffective. Harry stood, stretching muscles sore from the morning's training. His body had changed subtly since the ritual, leaner, more efficient, less bound by normal physical limitations. The star pattern remained burned into his palm, occasionally glowing when he channeled significant power. Where's Elara? He asked. Working with Ron and Ginny on those modified shield charms. Hermione gave him a sideways glance. She's pushing them hard. Ron nearly collapsed yesterday. She knows what's coming better than any of us, Harry replied, though he shared Hermione's concern. Elara's methods were effective but ruthless, treating their friends as soldiers rather than students. They walked back toward the temple's central chamber, passing columns inscribed with writing that shifted between ancient languages. Harry could read them all now, the knowledge flowing from his integrated Moirai consciousness. Any word from the others? He asked. The North American vessel, Sophia, arrives tonight. Neville's bringing her through the Barcelona access point. Hermione consulted her notes. And Victor says the Eastern European vessel has agreed to meet, but hasn't committed to joining us. That's 4 of the 7, Harry calculated. Still no trace of the tropical one. Nothing concrete. Luna thinks they're deliberately hiding their signature. They entered the main chamber where their base of operations had been established. Maps covered ancient stone tables, magical instruments monitored dimensional stability worldwide, and communication mirrors linked them to allies across continents. What had begun as Harry's small group of friends had expanded into a loose organization they half-jokingly called the Remnant, those positioned between conventional magical society and the coming storm. Ron and Ginny were practicing with Alara in one corner, casting shield variations that incorporated shadow aspect principles. Fred and George worked at a cluttered table, developing hybrid technologies that combined conventional wizarding techniques with Moirai concepts. Luna sat in a trance-like state before a hovering sphere that displayed real-time dimensional fluctuations. "How are the negotiations with Dumbledore progressing?" Harry asked as they crossed to the central strategy table. Hermione sighed. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The Ministry's splintering into factions, those who want to work with us versus those who still see us as the primary threat. Umbridge leads the hardliners, but the unspeakables are firmly in our corner after what happened in Oslo. And Dumbledore himself? Cautiously supportive. He's been keeping the Ministry's more aggressive elements at bay while we work. Hermione hesitated. He's requested a direct meeting with you. Says he has crucial information about the Unmaker. Harry had avoided direct contact with his former mentor since their confrontation at the Stone Circle. The betrayal still stung, even if he understood Dumbledore's perspective better now. Set it up, he decided. We need all the information we can get. A disturbance at the chamber entrance drew their attention. Cairo stumbled in, looking drained and disheveled, a sharp contrast to his normally composed appearance. Luna supported him, her dreamy expression replaced by genuine concern. What happened? Harry demanded, crossing to them quickly. Oslo was a diversion, Kairos gasped, accepting water from Ginny. The real attack came in London. A full manifestation, right in the heart of Diagon Alley. The room fell silent. How bad? Harry asked quietly. Bad. Kairos met his eyes directly. The dimensional tear was at least 30 feet across. The Unmaker aspect that emerged, it consumed everything it touched. Buildings, objects, people, all converted back to raw magical potential. The Aurors couldn't even slow it down. Casualties? Hermione whispered. At least 50 confirmed. Hundreds more affected by proximity to unraveled magic, their own abilities destabilizing, spells backfiring. Kairos drew a shaky breath. If Dumbledore hadn't arrived when he did, it would have been much worse. Dumbledore contained it? Harry asked, surprised. Kairos nodded. Not alone. He was working with someone, a witch I didn't recognize. Together they managed to seal the tear, but the damage was extensive. Half of Diagon Alley simply doesn't exist anymore. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Public spaces. Dimensional tears. The Unmaker manifesting physically. It's accelerating, Alara said, joining them. Just as the memories warned. First isolated incidents, then public spaces, next major magical convergence points. Hogwarts, Harry realized. The Ministry. Anywhere magic concentrates heavily. We're out of time for gradual preparation, Kairos confirmed. The Unmaker is fully engaged with our reality now. Harry made a decision. Move up the meeting with Dumbledore. Today, not tomorrow. And send word to the Eastern European vessel, tell them what happened in London. They need to understand this isn't optional anymore. As the group mobilized with new urgency, Harry pulled Alara aside. You've been holding something back, he said quietly. Something about the Unmaker. I can sense it in your thoughts. Since their shared ritual, a connection had formed between them, not mind-reading, but a heightened awareness of each other's emotional and mental states. Harry had felt Elara's growing unease, her careful compartmentalization of certain knowledge. She didn't deny it. There are aspects of this situation I've been processing. We don't have time for processing. If you know something that could help, it's not that simple. She glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. The Moirai memories you've accessed are incomplete. There's context missing about the Unmaker's nature, its purpose. Then fill in the gaps, Harry pressed. Elara studied him, shadow aspect swirling subtly in her eyes. The Unmaker isn't our enemy, Harry. It's part of a natural cycle. Creation and dissolution, form and void, balancing forces that maintain magical equilibrium. Tell that to the 50 people who died in Diagon Alley. I'm not dismissing the tragedy, she countered. But viewing the Unmaker as simply a destructive force misses the larger pattern. It's responding to imbalance, not causing it. What imbalance? Magic has been increasingly structured, controlled, regulated for centuries. The natural flow disrupted by ministry restrictions, by wands channeling power along predetermined paths, by spells that force magic into rigid forms. Her eyes took on a fervent gleam. The Moirai understood the need for fluidity, for balance between structure and chaos. Harry frowned, sensing where this led. You're suggesting we shouldn't be fighting the Unmaker. I'm suggesting we should be learning from it. Elara stepped closer. The 7 vessels awakening simultaneously isn't coincidence, Harry. It's opportunity, a chance to reshape magic itself, to restore balance on our terms instead of having it forced through destruction. By doing what, exactly? By reclaiming our role as shapers, not just vessels. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Magic should flow freely again, not bound by ministry regulations or wizarding traditions. We could guide that transformation. The 7 of us, united. The vision she painted was seductive, a world where magic existed in its primal state, not constrained by wands or incantations. Harry couldn't deny part of him resonated with the idea. The Moirai within him yearned for that freedom, that return to first principles. But the human part of him remembered Diagon Alley, remembered the cost of uncontrolled transformation. We need to discuss this with the others, he said finally. After we meet with Dumbledore. Elara looked disappointed but nodded. Just keep an open mind. There's more at stake than simply defeating a threat. Dumbledore arrived through a controlled tear in reality, a technique Harry had developed to allow select allies direct access to their sanctuary. The headmaster looked older than Harry remembered, the weight of recent events evident in his face. Harry, he greeted with simple dignity. Thank you for agreeing to meet. They convened in a smaller chamber away from the main operations area. Harry, Hermione, Ron, and Kairos representing the remnant, Dumbledore accompanied by Professor McGonagall and, surprisingly, the severe unspeakable woman from their confrontation at the stone circle. This is Madame Callista Crane, Dumbledore introduced. Head of Dimensional Research at the Department of Mysteries, and an invaluable ally in understanding what we face. Crane inclined her head slightly. Mr. Potter. Your disappearing act caused quite the stir in magical containment circles. I imagine it did, Harry replied coolly. Dumbledore sensed the tension and moved to business. We've been analyzing the Diagon Alley incident. The tear was different from previous manifestations, more structured, almost deliberate. The Unmaker aspect that emerged showed signs of intelligence. That's consistent with what we've observed, Kairos confirmed. As its presence in our dimension increases, it's adapting, learning. Learning to do what? Ron asked. Crane answered. To target specific magical nexus points for maximum effect. The attack on Diagon Alley wasn't random, it struck precisely where 3 major ley lines converge beneath Gringotts. It's mapping our magical infrastructure, Hermione realized. Finding weak points. Exactly, Dumbledore nodded. Which brings me to why I requested this meeting. He placed a small wooden box on the table between them. This artifact was recovered from the Department of Mysteries archives after the first tiers appeared. We believe it's relevant to your situation. The box bore no markings, but Harry's enhanced perception detected ancient magic emanating from within, magic that resonated with his Morai aspect. When Dumbledore opened it, a small crystalline object rested inside, shaped like a seven-pointed star. The seventh confluence, Crane identified it. According to our records, it was created during the last major dimensional disruption, over 3,000 years ago. Harry reached for the crystal, feeling drawn to it. The moment his fingers touched its surface, images flooded his mind, 7 figures standing in a circle, channeling power into a central point, creating a bridge between dimensions. It's a key, he said, knowledge surfacing from the Morai consciousness. A focus point for all 7 vessels to work in concert. That aligns with our research, Crane confirmed. Historical accounts suggest a ritual performed by star-marked ones to mend the veil between worlds. But we don't have all 7 vessels, Hermione pointed out. We've only located 4, possibly 5. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled for the first time. That's the other reason for my visit. We believe we've identified the vessel in the tropics, a shaman in the magical community of Papua New Guinea. And there's evidence the 7th has been hiding in plain sight all along. Harry's attention sharpened. Where? Hogwarts itself, McGonagall spoke for the first time. A student exhibiting unusual magical manifestations, though different from your own. Who? Hermione asked. McGonagall and Dumbledore exchanged glances before the headmaster answered. Miss Lovegood. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Luna, dreamy, perceptive Luna, who saw things others missed, who perceived reality differently, who had adapted to their Morai concepts with suspicious ease. Of course, Harry breathed, pieces falling into place. That's why she could track the dimensional fluctuations so accurately. She wasn't just sensing them, she was connected to them. We believe she represents the balance aspect, Dumbledore explained. The central point of the 7, neither creation nor destruction but the harmony between. Does she know? Ron asked. I suspect she's always known, in her way, McGonagall said with surprising gentleness. Miss Lovegood experiences reality, uniquely. The conversation shifted to logistics, locating the final vessel in Papua New Guinea, confirming Luna's status, preparing for what Crane called the convergence ritual. Through it all, Harry noticed Dumbledore watching him with an unreadable expression. When the others left to implement action plans, Dumbledore asked for a private word. You seem troubled by more than external threats, the headmaster observed once they were alone. Harry considered deflecting, then decided on honesty. Elara has a different perspective on what's happening. She sees the Unmaker as part of a natural cycle, not an enemy to defeat. And you find yourself partially agreeing, Dumbledore nodded, unsurprised. The Morai memories suggest she's not entirely wrong, Harry admitted. There's a pattern to this, creation, dissolution, renewal. But her solution? Let me guess, Dumbledore said gently. She believes the vessels should guide this transformation, reshaping magic according to ancient principles rather than modern constraints. Harry stared. How did you know? Because it's the same conclusion Gellert Grindelwald reached when he encountered Morai lore. Dumbledore's expression turned pained. His greater good philosophy was partly inspired by fragments of Morai knowledge, the belief that magic should flow freely, unrestricted by statute or secrecy. The parallel unsettled Harry. I'm not Grindelwald. Neither is Elara. No, but you faced the same temptation he did, the belief that superior understanding justifies imposing transformation on others. Dumbledore leaned forward intently. The Unmaker isn't just destruction, Harry. It's simplification, the reduction of complexity back to potential. The question isn't whether change comes, but how it comes, and who guides it. Harry absorbed this, recognizing the wisdom behind Dumbledore's words. Despite their complicated history, the headmaster understood the philosophical dimensions of power in ways few others could. "What would you suggest?" Harry asked. "Balance, true balance." Dumbledore smiled slightly. "Not destruction or preservation, but transformation with continuity. Change that honors what came before while creating space for what comes next." "The third path," Harry murmured, remembering his own thoughts during the confrontation in the forest. "Precisely." Dumbledore rose to leave. "And that, I suspect, is why you're the form aspect, Harry. Not just to shape matter, but to shape possibility itself." The following days passed in a blur of preparation. Luna accepted the revelation of her nature with characteristic equanimity. "Oh, I've always known I was different," she said when Harry approached her. "The Nargles told me years ago, but I thought it would be rude to mention it before you figured it out." Examining her magical signature with his enhanced perception, Harry confirmed Dumbledore's theory. Luna's magic wasn't structured like his or Elara's, nor like conventional wizards'. It existed in perfect equilibrium, neither creating nor destroying but constantly transforming, the essence of balance. The Papua New Guinea vessel, a wiry, energetic woman named Kaya who controlled the severance aspect, arrived with Neville, immediately challenging Harry's leadership. "Why should form dominate?" she demanded in their first meeting. "Severance is equally vital, the ability to cut connections, to end what must end." "No one's dominating," Harry assured her. "We need all 7 aspects working in concert." Only the Eastern European vessel remained elusive, communicating through Victor Crumb but refusing direct contact. The void aspect, Kairos explained, was naturally reclusive, associated with absence, with the spaces between things. "They'll come when absolutely necessary," he predicted. "Not before." Meanwhile, the Unmaker's manifestations continued worldwide. Tiers opened in Beijing, Cairo, New York, anywhere magic concentrated heavily. The pattern Elara had identified became clear, each manifestation targeted magical nexus points, systematically undermining the structured magical network humans had built over centuries. Conventional wizarding defenses proved increasingly ineffective. Only teams incorporating Moirai principles could contain the tiers, and even then, only temporarily. The Ministry finally abandoned pretense of control, focusing instead on evacuation and damage mitigation. Through it all, Harry sensed Elara watching, waiting. Their philosophical disagreement remained unresolved, though practical necessity kept them working together. The shadow aspect was essential to their containment protocols, balancing Harry's form with necessary contrast. Their breakthrough came when Hermione and Crane collaborated on mapping the pattern of manifestations. "It's not random," Hermione explained, displaying a magical projection showing tiers worldwide. "There's a sequence, a progression building towards something. A final convergence point," Crane confirmed. "Based on the pattern, we project a massive manifestation at the intersection of all major ley lines globally." "Where?" Kairos asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. Crane's answer confirmed his fear. "Stonehenge. In 3 days' time." The ancient monument had been built precisely because of its magical significance, a natural confluence of earth energy that wizards had recognized millennia ago. If the Unmaker fully manifested there, the dimensional barrier would collapse completely. "That's our deadline," Harry decided. "We need all 7 vessels at Stonehenge before the Unmaker arrives." "To do what?" Kaya challenged. "Contain it? Destroy it? Or work with it?" The question brought the philosophical division into open discussion. Harry explained Elara's perspective, the view that the Unmaker represented necessary rebalancing, that perhaps their role wasn't to defeat it but to guide its transformative effect. "There's truth in both approaches," Luna said dreamily. "The Unmaker isn't evil, but unchecked dissolution isn't balance either. What if we could redirect it?" Hermione suggested. "Channel its transformative energy selectively rather than letting it convert everything back to potential." This middle path resonated with what Dumbledore had told Harry, transformation with continuity rather than wholesale destruction or rigid preservation. Using the crystal confluence as a focus, they might guide the process rather than simply opposing it. As they debated strategy, a notification chime sounded from their monitoring instruments. Another tier had opened, this one in Hogsmeade, dangerously close to Hogwarts itself. "It's testing our defenses," Kairos warned. Probing for reaction. Harry made a rapid decision. "Elara, take Luna and Kaya. Contain the tear but don't fully close it, we need to understand its targeting pattern." As the three vessels departed through a controlled dimensional shift, Harry felt a momentary unease. Something about Elara's expression when discussing Hogsmeade had triggered his intuition. He dismissed the concern, they needed her shadow aspect for effective containment. "The Void vessel has finally responded," Hermione reported, interrupting his thoughts. "They've agreed to meet tomorrow at the Barcelona access point. And the confluence ritual? Are we ready?" Crane nodded. "Theoretically. We've reconstructed the procedure from historical accounts and the crystal's own embedded information. With all 7 vessels, it should create a controlled dimensional interface, essentially a dialogue with the Unmaker rather than a battle." Harry absorbed this information, thinking through contingencies. The strategy seemed sound: gather all 7 vessels, use the confluence ritual to establish controlled contact with the Unmaker, negotiate transformation rather than annihilation. Yet something nagged at him, a variable they weren't considering. The answer came 2 hours later when their dimensional monitors went haywire. Multiple tiers opening simultaneously, Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley, the Ministry itself. "That's impossible," Crane whispered, watching the displays. "The pattern doesn't allow for simultaneous manifestations." Unless something's changed, Harry realized, sudden dread forming in his stomach. Unless someone changed it. He extended his perception outward, searching for his connected vessels. Luna and Kaya registered immediately, their signatures confused, disoriented. But Elara. Elara's signature had changed, expanded. Where her shadow aspect had previously balanced with his form, it now dominated, absorbing rather than complementing. "She's betrayed us," Harry said flatly. "She's not containing the tears. She's widening them." The revelation sparked immediate action. Harry led a response team to Hogsmeade, finding devastation upon arrival. Buildings near the 3 broomsticks had been converted to raw magical potential, not destroyed but unraveled, their very reality rewritten to a more primitive state. Luna and Kaya lay unconscious near the tier's edge, their systems shocked by whatever Elara had done. As Harry approached, Luna stirred. She took it, the blonde witch murmured, disoriented. "Drank it like water." "Took what?" Harry asked urgently, helping her sit up. "The unraveled magic." When the tear opened, the Unmaker began converting structures to pure potential. Elara, she intercepted that energy, absorbed it directly. Luna's normally dreamy eyes focused with unusual clarity. "She's trying to become the Unmaker's vessel, Harry. To control the transformation herself." The implications hit him like a physical blow. Elara wasn't just siding with the Unmaker, she was attempting to embody its principle, to direct its power according to her vision of liberated magic. Kairos confirmed this theory when they regrouped at their sanctuary. "It's been attempted before," he explained grimly. "A shadow aspect trying to absorb the Unmaker's essence. The results were catastrophic." "Why didn't you warn us?" Hermione demanded. "Because it shouldn't have been possible," Kairos insisted. "The Unmaker isn't an entity that can be contained in human form, it's a fundamental force. Trying to embody it is like trying to become gravity itself." "Yet Elara believes she can succeed," Harry noted. "Yes, and that's what makes her dangerous." Kairos paced anxiously. "She won't simply fail, she'll become a conduit, accelerating the unraveling process beyond anything we've seen so far." Their strategy required immediate revision. No longer merely preparing to channel the Unmaker at Stonehenge, they now faced a rogue vessel actively working against them. The convergence ritual remained their best hope, but they needed to neutralize Alara first, or somehow bring her back into balance. We need the Void vessel now, not tomorrow, Harry decided. And we need to locate Alara before she causes more damage. Finding her proved unnecessary. As night fell, the sanctuary's alerting wards activated. Someone was approaching, someone with a Moirai signature. Harry met the visitor in the temple courtyard, prepared for confrontation. But instead of Alara, a tall, thin man with colorless eyes and nearly translucent skin materialized from the shadows. The Void aspect vessel had arrived unannounced. "You have a shadow problem," he said without preamble, his accent faintly Eastern European. "I felt the imbalance from Budapest." "You must be Mikhail," Harry replied, sensing the Void essence flowing through the newcomer, the principle of emptiness, of potential unfilled. "Names matter little to Void," he responded cryptically. "I am the absence that defines presence, as you are the form that defines possibility." Despite the situation's urgency, Harry found himself intrigued by this strange, philosophical vessel. Each aspect approached reality differently, he realized, his own form perspective focused on structure and creation, while Void perceived everything through the lens of what wasn't there. "We're attempting the convergence ritual tomorrow," Harry explained. "But Alara, our shadow vessel, has broken alignment. She's trying to embody the Unmaker directly." Mikhail nodded as if this confirmed a suspicion. "Shadow always covets Void's domain. The darkness yearns to become nothing, forgetting that without light to define it, shadow cannot exist. Can you help us find her? Stop her? Finding is unnecessary. She will go where darkness meets nothing." Mikhail gazed upward at the star-filled sky. The ancient circle. The stone teeth biting at heaven. Stonehenge, Harry translated. "She's already at the convergence point." "Not yet, but soon." Mikhail focused on Harry with unsettling intensity. "You must understand, form vessel. Shadow cannot become Void. In attempting to embody the Unmaker, she will instead become its instrument, conscious but no longer in control." This aligned with what Kairos had warned. Alara wouldn't succeed in directing the Unmaker, she would become its gateway into full manifestation, accelerating the unraveling process beyond their ability to contain. "Then we need to perform the ritual before she reaches Stonehenge," Harry concluded. Mikhail shook his head. "Impossible. The convergence requires the sacred location, and..." He hesitated, "all 7 aspects. Including shadow," Harry realized with sinking feeling. "We need Alara." "The one who was Alara," Mikhail corrected. "What exists now is shadow corrupted by false Void, a dangerous imbalance." They debated strategies through the night, bringing the others into planning. The convergence ritual required all 7 aspects working in harmony: form, Void, binding, severance, illumination, shadow, and balance. Without Alara, they couldn't establish the controlled dimensional interface needed to redirect the Unmaker's energy. "What if we replaced her?" Kaya suggested. "Found another shadow vessel?" "Impossible in the time remaining," Kairos said. "Shadow vessels are extraordinarily rare, and awakening requires weeks of preparation." "Then we confront her directly," Ron proposed. "Bring her back forcibly." "Also problematic," Mikhail countered. "In absorbing unraveled magic, she's gained significant power, likely beyond our combined strength in direct confrontation." The solution, when it came, emerged from an unexpected source. Luna, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke with uncharacteristic firmness. "We don't need to defeat Alara or replace her," she said. "We need to balance her." All eyes turned to the dreamy-eyed witch. "The ritual doesn't require shadow in perfect alignment," Luna continued. "It requires all 7 aspects in balance. If Alara has moved toward Void, becoming a false emptiness, then what stabilizes her isn't opposition but complementary pressure. Explaining Luna in Luna terms, Ron sighed. What exactly are you suggesting? I think, Hermione interpreted slowly, she's saying we can still perform the ritual with Elara in her current state, we just need to adjust all other aspects to create a new equilibrium around her distortion. Luna nodded serenely. The Nargles call it dancing with the whirlwind. Harry considered this approach. Instead of trying to restore Elara to her original state, they would adapt the ritual to accommodate her transformation. It was risky, untested, but aligned with the principle of balance at the core of Moirai philosophy. It could work, Mikhail acknowledged reluctantly. But it would require precise calibration from all vessels, particularly the balance aspect. He looked at Luna. You would bear the greatest burden. Some burdens are actually quite light when you don't resist them, Luna replied with a smile. With this new approach, their plan solidified. They would proceed to Stonehenge the following evening, attempt to reason with Elara if possible, but prepare to adapt the convergence ritual to her transformed state if necessary. The crystal confluence would serve as their focal point, channeling their combined aspects to establish controlled interface with the Unmaker. As preparations intensified, Harry sought a private moment with Dumbledore, who had remained at the sanctuary to assist. What if this doesn't work? He asked bluntly. If we can't redirect the transformation? Dumbledore considered the question with appropriate gravity. Then magic as we know it ends, replaced by something more primal, less structured. Not oblivion, Harry, but a fundamental reset to how magical energy interacts with our world. And is that necessarily bad? Harry pressed, giving voice to thoughts he'd been wrestling with. If the current system is inherently unbalanced. That, Dumbledore said gently, is the question at the heart of your conflict with Elara. Not whether change comes, but who decides its nature and pace. He adjusted his half-moon spectacles thoughtfully. The difference between revolution and evolution is rarely the destination, but the journey taken to reach it. Harry nodded, understanding the wisdom. Elara sought revolution, immediate, dramatic restructuring of magical reality according to ancient principles. He found himself advocating evolution, transformation that preserved connection to what came before while creating space for what might be. There's a third path, he said, echoing their earlier conversation. There always is, Dumbledore agreed. Finding it is the challenge. Dawn broke over Stonehenge, painting the ancient stones in golden light. The site had been evacuated days earlier, conventional magical authorities recognizing the pattern pointing toward this location as the Unmaker's ultimate target. Harry and his allies arrived through controlled dimensional shifts, establishing a perimeter around the stone circle. Hermione coordinated with Ministry representatives at a safe distance, while Crane prepared monitoring equipment to document the unprecedented magical event. The vessels gathered at the circle's center, Harry, Form, Mikhail, Void, Sophia, Illumination, Kaya, Severance, Luna, Balance, and Kairos, representing binding, though his partial integration limited his effectiveness. Only Shadow remained absent, Elara had not yet appeared. The dimensional thinning has already begun, Kairos observed, pointing to subtle distortions in the air above the central altar stone. The Unmaker will manifest here within hours, with or without Elara's assistance. Harry nodded, feeling the weakening barriers between realities. His enhanced perception showed the ley lines converging beneath them, ancient rivers of magical energy pulsing with increasing intensity as the dimensional pressure built. Places, everyone, he directed. We'll establish the initial alignment and adjust when Elara arrives. They positioned themselves according to the ritual specifications, forming a human version of the seven-pointed star pattern. Luna stood at the center, the crystal confluence cradled in her palms. Each vessel extended one hand toward the crystal, their star-marked palms glowing with their respective aspects. Beginning attunement, Harry announced. They synchronized their magical signatures, a process like tuning instruments before a concert. Harry's form aspect resonated with structure and possibility, harmonizing first with Sophia's illumination, then Kaya's severance, each connection strengthening the emerging pattern. As the attunement neared completion, the air between the stones shimmered. Reality rippled, colors inverting briefly as a tear began forming directly above the altar stone. "She's coming," Mikhail warned unnecessarily. The tear widened, not the chaotic rupture of previous Unmaker manifestations but a controlled opening. Through it stepped Elara, yet not entirely Elara anymore. Her physical form remained recognizable, but her presence had transformed. Shadow clung to her like a living shroud, occasionally revealing glimpses of something vast and ancient moving beneath the surface. Her eyes had become pools of emptiness, reflecting nothing. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic undertones that vibrated through reality itself. "Right on time," she observed, surveying their ritual arrangement. "I wondered if you'd attempt the convergence without me." "We need all 7 aspects," Harry replied evenly. "Even yours." Elara smiled, an expression both familiar and alien on her transformed features. "My aspect has evolved, Harry. I've touched what you still fear to embrace. You haven't become the Unmaker, Elara. You've become its conduit." Semantics. She approached the circle, studying each vessel in turn. "The question is whether you'll fight me or join me. The transformation comes regardless." Harry felt the others tensing, preparing for conflict. He raised a hand, signaling restraint. "We're not here to fight," he said. "We're here to guide the transformation, not prevent it." This caught Elara's attention. "Explain." "You were right about the cycle," Harry acknowledged. "The rigid structure of modern magic requires adjustment, rebalancing. But complete dissolution isn't balance, it's simply replacing one extreme with another." Pretty words to mask preservation of a flawed system, Elara countered, but she seemed interested despite her dismissal. "Not preservation. Evolution." Harry gestured to their arranged ritual. "The convergence doesn't block the Unmaker, it establishes interface, dialogue. We can channel its transformative energy selectively, maintaining continuity while creating change." Elara circled them slowly, considering. The shadow essence around her rippled with each movement, occasionally extending tendrils toward the forming dimensional tear above. "And if I refuse?" she asked finally. "Then magic unravels completely," Kairos answered before Harry could. "Not liberation, Elara, obliteration. The Unmaker doesn't discriminate between oppressive structures and necessary ones. It reduces everything to undifferentiated potential. Including vessels," Luna added dreamily. "Shadow needs form to exist, just as form needs shadow to be defined. Total unraveling leaves nothing, not even you." This fundamental truth seemed to penetrate Elara's transformed consciousness. She paused, looking upward at the widening tier where glimpses of the interstice became visible, that swirling, star-filled void between realities. "The space for your aspect remains open," Harry said, gesturing to the empty position in their formation. "Join us. Help shape what comes next instead of simply ending what exists now." For several heartbeats, the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. Harry could sense the conflicting impulses within Elara, her legitimate grievance against magical stagnation warring with recognition of the destruction her chosen path would bring. "I won't be controlled," she said finally. "Not by you, not by Kairos, not by anyone." "Not control," Harry corrected. "Harmony. 7 equal aspects in balance." Something shifted in Elara's expression, a flicker of her original self emerging from behind the shadow void hybrid she'd become. "Very well," she decided. "Let us converse with the Unmaker." Relief washed through the gathered vessels as Elara took her position in the formation. Luna adjusted the crystal confluence, compensating for Elara's transformed state. The star pattern they formed began to glow, lines of force connecting each vessel to the central crystal. "The tier widens," Mikhail warned, his colorless eyes fixed on the rippling reality above them. "The Unmaker approaches the threshold." "Begin the convergence," Harry instructed. Each vessel channeled their aspect into the crystal simultaneously. Harry contributed form, the principle of structure and possibility. Mikhail added void, the concept of emptiness that defines fullness. Sophia provided illumination, revealing truth through light. Kaya contributed severance, the necessary ending that permits new beginning. Kairos, limited but essential, added binding, the connections between disparate elements. Ilara's contribution came reluctantly at first, then with increasing confidence, shadow transformed but still recognizable, the contrast that gives definition to light. At the center, Luna balanced all aspects through the crystal confluence, her expression serene despite the immense magical pressure. The seven-pointed star beneath them ignited fully, burning into the earth itself as the ritual reached its peak. Above, the dimensional tier stabilized, neither closing nor expanding but transforming into a controlled interface. Through it, the Unmaker began to manifest. Unlike previous manifestations, this wasn't a destructive entity emerging into their reality. Instead, the ritual created a liminal space, a conversation point between dimensions where principles could be exchanged without either reality fully imposing on the other. The Unmaker took no physical form. It existed as concept made semi-visible, a shifting void that consumed light, matter, and magic, reducing complexity to potential. Yet within that dissolution, patterns formed briefly before dissolving again, hints of creation within destruction. You seek dialogue, came its communication, not words but pure conceptual transfer directly into their consciousness. Unusual. Typically your kind resists dissolution. Not resistance, Harry replied, speaking for the group. Guidance. Transformation with continuity, not simple reduction. Continuity perpetuates imbalance. Structure has dominated too long. Return to potential is necessary. Structure and potential aren't opposites, Luna interjected, her dreamy voice suddenly carrying profound authority. They're phases in a cycle that stagnated. We propose restarting the cycle, not ending it. The Unmaker's presence shifted, something like attention focusing on their ritual configuration. The seven aspects. Long dormant. Now awakened simultaneously. This is significant. We represent the original principles, Kairos confirmed. Form. Void. Shadow. Illumination. Severance. Binding. Balance. The foundations upon which magic was first structured. Yet you maintain human perspective. Interesting. Through the crystal confluence, Harry sensed the Unmaker's evaluation, its recognition of their unique position as bridges between primordial magic and human consciousness. Neither purely Moirai nor purely human, the vessels occupied a third space, the integration point between cosmic principle and individual experience. We propose selective transformation, Harry offered. The liberation of magic from unnecessary constraints while maintaining the structures that prevent chaos. Compromise. Half measures. The Unmaker's response carried something like dismissal. Balance, Luna corrected firmly. Neither rigid preservation nor wholesale destruction. Renewal through guided transformation. For a moment, the interface wavered. The Unmaker's essence pressed against the boundaries established by their ritual, testing for weakness. Ilara's transformed shadow aspect resonated dangerously with this pressure, nearly breaking alignment. Harry reached across the formation, not physically but through their connected aspects, offering form to complement her shadow. The gesture stabilized her, reminding her of their interdependence. The shadow vessel seeks my essence, the Unmaker observed. Wishes to direct my purpose. A mistake, Ilara acknowledged, surprising everyone. I sought to control what should be partnered with. This admission shifted the energy within their ritual. The seven aspects aligned more harmoniously, strengthening the interface. Through the crystal confluence, Luna began channeling a visualization, showing the Unmaker how selective transformation might proceed. Key magical nexus points would remain intact, maintaining the framework that prevented total chaos. But the rigid regulations, the artificial restrictions, the ossified traditions would be dissolved, allowing magic to flow more naturally through those preserved channels. An alternative to complete dissolution, the Unmaker acknowledged. Partial renewal while maintaining continuity. A third path, Harry confirmed. Neither preservation nor destruction. The negotiation continued as energy built around them. The crystal confluence glowed increasingly bright, channeling the combined power of 7 awakened vessels. Above, the controlled tier stabilized further, the Unmaker's presence neither advancing nor retreating but engaged in genuine exchange. Then Elara faltered. The Shadow Void hybrid she become struggled to maintain equilibrium. The Unmaker's proximity triggered resonance within her transformed aspect, pulling her toward full dissolution. Hold the formation, Harry commanded as her position in the star pattern wavered. I can't, Elara gasped, shadow essence swirling chaotically around her. It's too strong, the pull toward unmaking. The ritual began destabilizing. The interface between dimensions flickered, the Unmaker's essence pushing against weakening boundaries. If the formation broke now, with the dimensional barrier already thinned, the consequences would be catastrophic, uncontrolled dissolution spreading outward from Stonehenge across the global magical network. Harry made a split-second decision. Without breaking his own position, he extended his consciousness toward Elara, offering form essence to counterbalance her shadow void instability. Take what you need, he told her, opening himself completely. The risk was enormous. By connecting directly to her corrupted aspect, he exposed himself to the same dissolution process consuming her. But as form aspect, the principle of structure and possibility, he represented the natural counterpoint to her shadow void hybrid. Elara hesitated momentarily, then accepted the connection. Their aspects intertwined, not merging but complementing, each defining the other through contrast. Form providing framework, shadow providing definition. The proper balance they should have maintained from the beginning. Now, Luna. Harry called, maintaining the precarious connection with Elara while still channeling into the central crystal. Luna responded instantly. As balance aspect, she redirected the combined energies flowing through the confluence, establishing a new equilibrium that accommodated Elara's hybrid state. The 7-pointed star pattern beneath them reconfigured slightly, adapting to the altered aspect distribution. Through their shared consciousness, Harry glimpsed Elara's struggle, her genuine belief in magical liberation warped by the Unmaker's influence, her identity fragmenting as shadow and void principles competed within her. He offered not control but partnership, showing how their contrasting aspects completed rather than opposed each other. The form vessel demonstrates the principle, the Unmaker observed, something like approval coloring its conceptual communication. Structure that adapts rather than imposes. This is what we propose for magical reality itself, Harry replied, maintaining his tenuous balance with Elara. Flexible structure, guided evolution, transformation with continuity. The interface stabilized again as Elara found new equilibrium, her shadow aspect still transformed but no longer corrupted by false void. The 7 vessels, each representing foundational magical principles, channeled their combined essence through the crystal confluence. The proposal has merit, the Unmaker acknowledged. Selective dissolution. Guided renewal. The cycle continuing rather than resetting completely. Will you accept this alternative? Kairos asked formally. Withdraw your full manifestation in favor of targeted transformation. The Unmaker's presence shifted, its vast consciousness evaluating possibilities beyond human comprehension. Through the interface, they sensed its calculation, weighing complete dissolution against guided renewal, considering the unique significance of 7 awakened vessels proposing a third path. Terms acceptable. The vessels will guide the transformation. Dissolution targeted rather than complete. The cycle continues. Relief washed through the formation, though no one relaxed their concentration. The agreement marked only the beginning, now they needed to implement the transformation, channeling the Unmaker's energy selectively rather than allowing it to manifest destructively. Prepare for the reweaving, Harry instructed. each aspect contributing according to the pattern Luna establishes. Through the crystal confluence, Luna began directing their combined power. The balance aspect at the center, she created a template for magical restructuring, preserving essential foundations while dissolving calcified restrictions. The transformation began at Stonehenge itself, the ancient site serving as patient zero for a controlled magical revolution. The vessels watched as reality rippled outward from their circle, magic responding to their guidance. The rigid spellwork laid down by ministry regulations dissolved, while the natural channels formed by ley lines strengthened. Dissolution proceeds according to agreement, the Unmaker confirmed. The vessels maintained continuity while permitting necessary change. As the transformation spread, following magical networks outward from Stonehenge, each vessel contributed their unique perspective. Harry's form aspect provided structure for the new magical framework. Mikhail's void created space for possibility. Sophia's illumination revealed outdated patterns requiring dissolution. Kaya's severance cut connections to restrictive traditions. Kairos' binding established new relationships between magical elements. Ilara's shadow defined limitations necessary for stability. At the center, Luna balanced all aspects, ensuring no single principle dominated the transformation. The process accelerated, flowing through ley lines to magical communities worldwide. In Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley, previously damaged by uncontrolled manifestations, reality reknit itself according to more flexible patterns. At Hogwarts, centuries of accumulated spellwork shifted, adapting to the new magical paradigm without losing essential protections. Throughout the wizarding world, change propagated at varying rates. Core magical infrastructure, the foundations preventing chaos, remained intact but more adaptable. Unnecessary restrictions dissolved, allowing magic to flow more naturally. The transformation wasn't instantaneous or uniform, but organic, responding to local conditions while following global principles. As the controlled transformation proceeded, Harry maintained his balancing connection with Ilara. Through their linked consciousness, he sensed her perspective evolving, not abandoned but refined, recognizing the value of continuity alongside necessary change. "It's working," she acknowledged, shadow essence stabilizing around her. Not revolution or preservation, renaissance. The ritual reached its culmination as dawn broke over Stonehenge. The dimensional interface began closing naturally, the Unmaker's purpose fulfilled through guided transformation rather than complete dissolution. The crystal confluence dimmed gradually, having channeled unprecedented magical energy throughout the night. "The agreement is complete," the Unmaker communicated as its presence receded. "The cycle continues in new form. The vessels have chosen wisely." With those parting thoughts, the dimensional tier sealed completely. The 7 vessels remained in formation, maintaining the flow of transformation energy for several minutes more, ensuring stability before finally releasing their aspects. As the ritual concluded, exhaustion overcame them. They collapsed where they stood, drained by the monumental magical working they'd performed. Only Harry remained partially alert, his consciousness still linked with Ilara's as they slowly disentangled their aspects. "You were right," she told him through their fading connection. "The third path was always there." "We found it together," Harry replied, feeling their balance, form and shadow, creation and definition, as it should have been from the beginning. The sun rose fully over Stonehenge, illuminating 7 figures sprawled among ancient stones now inscribed with new patterns, the template for magic reborn. Rebuilding took months, though not in the conventional sense. The magical world hadn't been destroyed but transformed, requiring adaptation rather than reconstruction. Hogwarts reopened first, its ancient foundations having weathered the change better than most magical institutions. Harry stood on the astronomy tower, watching students cross the grounds below. 3 months had passed since the Stonehenge ritual, enough time to begin understanding the profound shifts in magical reality. "They're adapting remarkably well," Hermione observed, joining him at the parapet. "First years especially, they're developing abilities we never thought possible at their age." Harry nodded. Without rigid magical frameworks limiting their development, younger wizards exhibited natural talents previously suppressed by structured education. Wandless magic, once considered advanced, now emerged spontaneously in children following their intuition rather than prescribed techniques. The convergence affected everyone differently, he noted. Some barely noticed the change, while others found their entire approach to magic transformed, Hermione finished. Professor Flitwick says it's like learning a new dialect of a language you already speak, familiar but with different emphases. The ministry had undergone the most dramatic reorganization, its regulatory functions largely dissolved while protective and coordinative roles expanded. Umbridge and her ilk had faded into irrelevance, their controlling philosophy incompatible with the new magical paradigm. Dumbledore had emerged as a key transitional figure, his centuries of experience providing perspective as wizarding society adapted. Though he'd initially feared the transformation, he now embraced his role guiding others through the shift. "Any word from the others?" Hermione asked. "Scattered," Harry replied. "Doing what vessels have always done, guiding from the margins rather than controlling from the center." After Stonehenge, the seven had gone their separate ways. Mikhail returned to Eastern Europe, helping magical communities there navigate the new reality. Sophia established a school in North America based on intuitive rather than structured magical development. Kaya traveled between isolated magical populations, ensuring the transformation reached even remote practitioners. Luna remained at Hogwarts, her balance aspect naturally suited to educational transition. Kairos worked with Dumbledore, documenting the changes for future generations. "And Elara?" "She's in Greece," Harry said, answering Hermione's unasked question. "Exploring the original Morai sites, learning what she can about previous transformations." Their connection remained, though attenuated by distance, form and shadow aspects still defining each other across continents. Not romance in the conventional sense, but something deeper, complementary principles temporarily housed in human vessels. "And you?" Hermione asked gently. "What does the form aspect do now that reality has been reshaped?" Harry smiled, considering the question. The transformation hadn't ended with Stonehenge, it continued gradually, magic finding new expressions as wizards adapted to increased flexibility. His role wasn't to direct that evolution but to maintain its underlying structure, ensuring change proceeded without descending into chaos. "I watch. I guide when necessary. I maintain balance between what was and what could be." He turned from the parapet to face his friend fully. "Mostly, I try to remember I'm still Harry Potter, not just a vessel for ancient power." This had proven his greatest challenge, and triumph, since the ritual. Unlike Elara's initial approach, he'd integrated the Morai aspect without surrendering his humanity. The ancient consciousness existed alongside his personal identity rather than replacing it. "You've done well with that," Hermione observed. "Better than anyone expected." Below, students practiced in the courtyard, conventional wand movements alongside new, intuitive gestures that would have been impossible before the transformation. Older professors worked alongside younger ones, each learning from the other as magic found its new equilibrium. The third path, Harry mused, watching this harmonious adaptation. Not the Unmaker's complete dissolution or the Ministry's rigid preservation, but something in between, transformation with continuity. As if responding to his words, the star mark on his palm glowed briefly. Throughout the world, he sensed the other vessels perceiving the same moment, 7 aspects separated by distance but united in purpose, maintaining the delicate balance they'd established at Stonehenge. Magic would never return to its previous rigid state, but neither would it dissolve into formless chaos. Instead, it would continue evolving, guided by vessels who understood both its primordial nature and its human expression. Harry Potter had never been the chosen one, that simplistic narrative created to explain something far more ancient and complex. He was vessel for form aspect, one of 7 primordial principles that shaped magic itself. More importantly, he was still himself, the boy who lived, the friend who remained loyal, the wizard who found a third path when faced with impossible choices. As the sun set over Hogwarts, Harry sensed distant acknowledgement from Alara, shadow recognizing form across continents, complementary aspects maintaining the balance that preserved magic reborn. Not an ending, but transformation. Not victory, but harmony. Not chosen, but choosing, the path forward, one step at a time. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.